folks.
Uh-oh. There we go.
Yes, make sure that your laptop or whatever you're watching the stream on is muted. I know that we all like to listen to our voices back after we've already spoken, but it's a good idea to avoid stuff like echoes and all that undesirable stuff. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the holiday weekend so far. Hope you enjoyed last night's presentation on Interstate 68. That was certainly a lot of fun to do. We're back tonight with the third and final installment in our Bridges of the Delaware River webinar series. I'm your host, Roadway Wiz. I'll be guiding you through the proceedings tonight. We got quite an interesting panel joining us tonight. Some of you guys are back for more after last night, which is just great. We have, let's run through the list here. We've got Mike and Laura from Maryland back again with us. Great to have you.
Yay!
We had to get a married couple or two on this show just to show that we're not all a bunch of single losers.
Oh, you guys aren't losers.
No.
And we have Toddler Rainey. You may hear her in the background from time to time.
I'd rather listen to her, I think. Let's just have her. Can she narrate the whole thing? Let's just turn the keys over to her.
She didn't give us permission. Oh, here, Bob.
We've got Steve from New Jersey back after a day trip somewhere in New England.
I have seen far fewer things than I hoped.
Well, that's a shame.
It is a shame.
I was wondering why you were back so soon, but anyway. Nice to have you anyway.
Thank you.
We've got Sandor from Ohio.
Good evening.
We've got David from Long Island, New York.
Great to be here.
And we have making his debut finally after 2 seasons on Roadway Wiz Live. We are great to have him with. It's great to have him with us. He is representing Southern New Jersey. He is also the chairman of the board of the Philadelphia Eagles fan club. Big Jeff, welcome in.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Go Eagles.
Go Eagles. Go Birds.
Jeff is going to be going to each bridge live as we discuss it for a live look-in.
That would be cool. He could. It's not all that impossible either, if we lingered on each bridge long enough.
Just about. I could probably pass by each bridge and right in time to this video.
We could have done a live drive instead. So, this is the third and final part of the series. For those of you who may have already seen the first 2 parts, we started with part 1, which is the area I'm going to highlight in pink here, the upper Delaware, the bridges in New York State and Pennsylvania. We did that part of the series first, and then part 2. A couple weeks back, we looked at more of the upper and mid-Delaware River basin between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And tonight we're going to pick up where we left off, this section in yellow, the lower Delaware, including metropolitan Philadelphia, northern Delaware, and all the way down to the Cape May Lighthouse. If you have not gone back and seen the other 2 parts of this series, I definitely recommend that you do so. It's not required viewing for tonight by any stretch, but it is interesting to kind of go back and see everything upstream of where we're going to be discussing tonight, if you would like a more complete view of the series overall. Okay. And of course, I'm going to give you guys the quick photography disclaimer as we get started here. There are renderings in here and maps that are not mine, but all of the photography that you will see in this presentation is mine. And it was all taken legally and safely. We always ask that fellow drone pilots and photographers do things in a safe manner, just not only for your own safety, but also the safety of the traveling public. That's something that I take very seriously, and I want to make that clear before we go any further and look at some of the various angles of these bridges that I've been able to document over the years. So with that, I hope you enjoy. All right, let's meet the agencies that we'll be talking a bit about as the evening progresses. I believe there are 3 of them that we should at least mention at the start, from upstream to downstream, starting off with the Burlington County Bridge Commission. This is a public agency founded in the late 1940s, right after World War II. It holds jurisdiction over 2 of the bridges spanning the Delaware River in the Philadelphia metro. There are a total of 8 bridges altogether that it oversees. I do not have the list of the other ones in front of me, but the 2 major ones spanning the Delaware are the ones that we'll be discussing tonight. And you can see, if you'd like to check out more about the Bridge Commission, you can do so at the website I have listed here. Probably the most significant agency we'll talk about as the evening progresses is the Delaware River Port Authority, which is a bi-state agency formed, again, in the years right after World War II, 1951. 4 of the Delaware River bridges in the Philadelphia area fall under this agency's jurisdiction. And, of course, the DRPA has a very fine website that you can find more information about each bridge's status and operations and current construction projects and stuff like that. It's a good source for all of that stuff. And last but not least, we have, not to be confused with the DRPA, we have the DRBA, the Delaware River and Bay Authority. This agency was formed in the early 1960s. This one's a little bit unique in that it not only manages the Delaware Memorial Bridge, but it also oversees Wilmington Airport and the Cape May Lewis Ferry. So it's got a little bit of a diverse portfolio in terms of the types of facilities that fall under this agency's umbrella. The DRBA has its own website as well that I encourage you folks to check out on your own time if you're looking to learn more about some of these other facilities that the authority operates. We left off at the end of part 2 with this view looking south or downstream on the Delaware River, out of Trenton and in the general direction of Philly Metro. And that's where we're going to kick off this episode. So the next stop is the Cape May Lighthouse at the Atlantic Ocean. And we're glad to have you guys along with us as we stop at every bridge along the way, and we'll get there hopefully sometime tonight. So let's go. First up, as we head south out of Trenton, we quickly encounter this bridge, which was recently anointed part of the Interstate 95 corridor. It wasn't always meant to be that way. But the Turnpike Bridge crosses between the towns of Bristol and Burlington, Bristol, PA, Burlington, New Jersey. It serves to connect the east end of the Pennsylvania Turnpike main line with the end of the Pennsylvania connector of the New Jersey Turnpike. since it does fall under two different state agencies or different turnpike agencies, both are heavily involved in the bridge's maintenance. In fact, I believe that the line of jurisdiction between both agencies is more or less at the middle of the bridge, in the middle of the river, wherever the state line is, which I think is more or less right at the center of the main span. We had a pretty high-profile incident about 4 years ago with a partial failure of a section of the bridge, and there was some discussion about a replacement of that bridge. And there's been some discussion about a replacement bridge here anyway over the years, but I'm going to let Steve tell you guys more about that.
That's dangerous. So, yes, they had a structural scare while they were doing a routine inspection. So that's why bridge inspections are so critical to do on a regular basis. And based on what they saw, I'm not going to go into any details because I don't know which details are public or not, so you can look this up yourself. But they decided that they had to immediately close the span and do a thorough inspection, make sure that the problem they found was not repeated elsewhere, and solve the problem. And now they've gone to annual maintenance annual structural checks instead of biannual. Most bridges anywhere, it's agency by agency, but a lot of agencies will do biannual inspections. And the Turnpike Authority decided this one warrants it more frequently based on what they had seen. So they were able to get it reopened. I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks. It may have been a little longer than that before they got it reopened, but this was a round-the-clock operation. I know some of my coworkers were out there the first week pretty much night and day. They just swapped off in shifts, analyzing everything. So the bridge is sound, and they figured out that the problem was isolated. It was not going to repeat itself, hopefully, again, for the life of the bridge. But I believe now in their new capital program that they've announced, it includes at least a study of a new bridge and possibly some design thereof. But since the capital plan covers the next 9 years, do not expect that a new bridge is necessarily going to be built in the next 9 years, but the design may be completed within that time, and theoretically they could just keep moving with it. And until the design is done, we don't know, is the new bridge going to look like the existing? Are they going to twin it and rehab the existing, or are they going to tear this down? They're going to have to evaluate those options. So there's more we don't know than we do know. But what we do know is, for the time being, this bridge is safe to cross.
Yeah, and they did determine that it was an isolated thing, and that was, I'm sure, one of their first fears going in, that this was going to be something where the bridge was not salvageable at that point. I do understand that there was a contingency somewhere that had they had to knock this bridge down, that they could have built a new one on the spot. That's my understanding of it. If you want to elaborate on that more, Steve, that's fine. But I'm not sure how much. Again, these things are a little tricky because there are agreements that are in place as far as non-disclosure or partial disclosure and stuff like that. So I understand that there might be some things that we can't elaborate on too much, but that is one thing that I did hear about. And without getting too specific, that's all I'll say about it. If you want to go further with it, please feel free.
I think had they found it to be a systemic problem, they would have had to evaluate in short order whether it would be more costly to fix the problem across the whole bridge or just replace the bridge. And I cannot really speak to that process, unfortunately, on this video. To the panelists, I can tell more offline, but for the purpose of this video, I'll just say that, yes, I think you saw this with the Minneapolis bridge as well, that when a bridge is closed due to any sort of issue, Matthew Wong says a major crack in a critical member, for example. That is something agencies will start looking at right away as a just in case they find that there are more problems. Because if you don't start looking at it, you get what's happening in West Seattle, where that bridge is just closed and there's paralysis there. And so the bridge has been closed for months and months with no fix in sight and no replacement in sight. So much better to avoid that.
Well, yeah, especially on such a major corridor like this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now that it's part of I-95, and as we mentioned, it connects two major turnpikes in the Northeast. So this bridge does kind of fly under the radar a little bit in spite of that, but this is still a major connection in the Northeast, and that's especially now the case with I-95 being directed onto it, which again is a recent development. It was a part of I-276 originally, and then I-95 was redirected onto it in 2018? 17? Something like that.
18.
18.
In 18, it was officially I-95 on both sides. Prior to that, for a number of years, it had been 276 on the Pennsylvania side and unsigned 95 on the New Jersey side.
Uh-huh.
Because New Jersey officially extended 95 down to this bridge. If you looked at their straight line diagrams, that's what you would see back, 2013 or whatever. I think it goes back a while before that, but there were no 95 signs anywhere down there.
Yeah.
Were there any I-276 signs on the Jersey side?
On the mainline turnpike, the exit labeled it as 276, but it was officially 95 until you hit the state line.
Yeah, I only remember seeing 276 signs on that part.
It was signed.
I don't think there were any 276 reassurance shields on there, but the exit was marked as 276.
The exit was marked as 276. It was not marked as 76.
Maybe that's what I was seeing. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was always a debate. What was it 276 New Jersey? Because there were no signs in New Jersey other than that 276 sign.
All right. Moving on to the south, we go back in time a little bit to a very, by today's standards, ancient and very mechanical looking bridge. This one, the Burlington-Bristol Bridge, is the lone vertical lift bridge on this part of the lower Delaware, at least for vehicle traffic. Connects two historic river towns, Burlington, New Jersey, and Bristol, Pennsylvania. This bridge has been around since about 1930. It is amazing that it is still here today because ever since the 1960s, it seems like there have been nonstop repeated attempts to have this bridge replaced with something or other, whether it be on the interstate system or a more local replacement, but it still remains today. And I suppose this is the part of the presentation where we should get into Interstate 895. So the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission came out with this map, kind of simulating the 1975, one of those years, late 70s. This was their vision of the Delaware Valley Freeway system, should it be fully built out as planned. And I want to call your attention to one in particular here, that being this one right here. I don't know if that shows up enough. Let me draw that again. So Interstate 895 was drawn up as a possibility to connect Interstates 95 and 295 between Philadelphia and Trenton. It would have involved a replacement of the Burlington-Bristol Bridge with a new 6-lane expressway bridge. From what I have been able to gather, there were two significant groups of thought as far as what the design of that bridge should be. One of them was a particularly boring steel girder bridge. The other one would have been interesting because it would have been one of the first cable-stayed bridges built in the United States. It would have probably taken on that very European-like form of the early cable-stayed bridges out in countries such as Sweden and Germany. But instead of a possible replacement of the bridge, the locals balked at the idea, and not only is there no new bridge over the Delaware, but there's no freeway-to-freeway connection between these two highways. Well, actually there still isn't, because you still can't reach 295 from the turnpike directly. So 895 never became a reality. I don't know. Who wants to chime in on that?
The 95 to 295 connection is supposed to happen. It's just a question of how long it's going to take before they finally actually build it.
You mean on the turnpike, as far as building a...
Yeah, coming over the turnpike bridge and then getting onto 295. You are going to be able to do that. It's just a question of how long it takes until they actually build it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will this be in Ramey's lifetime, much less anybody else's?
Well,
Never gonna happen.
yeah, I mean, I'm of the understanding that that's not very high on their priority list. So I'm not holding my breath as far as that's concerned. The one reason why, the one thing that you can see as far as the 895 is concerned, the exit for PA 413 on I-95 was built as such. That's where 895 would have taken off from and gone east towards Burlington. That's
Now,
a very...
supposedly, I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
that does seem like a pretty, you're talking about on the Pennsylvania side, that does seem like a pretty overpowered interchange for what it is.
I was going to point that out right before you said it, but actually the interchange itself, what's built of it is not 895. That was the intended connection from 95 to the turnpike, which would have gone over to the US 13 interchange at the time. The fourth leg of that interchange, if you look at historic aerials, you'll see stub ramps in there, and those stub ramps would have led to a southern leg, and that would have been 895. So really none of 895 was built there, but they left the room for it.
So there would have been like an extra Y at that point?
It was going to be a double Y with two freeways ending at 95 at the same point.
Wow. Okay.
now, supposedly on the New Jersey side, if you know 295, between exits 43 and 45, it's the only area of 295 that widens out to 4 lanes each way. I think that's also where 895 was going to connect into 295, and there is some sort of history with that, too. Now, at the same time, when right next to 295 in that area is a little county route 635, that road closed down recently because there's a small overpass there that it had to close. I forget the reason why. But supposedly 295 is 4 lanes each way in that area, too, to compensate for that road when it was to be closed. So you can go with either theory there, but supposedly the main one I heard was 895 was going to connect into 295 in that general area.
Yeah, and there were still further ambitious plans to continue the freeway alignment further east as an extension of Route 72 out as far as whatever that circle is called where 70 and 72 meet.
The 4 Mile Circle.
4 Mile Circle, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there would have been a freeway jumping off from there in a general northwest direction, west of Fort Dix to connect in with this freeway, which would have led you to the Burlington-Bristol Bridge. Obviously, none of that got built, and we're still left with the old bridge that we see today. And this bridge has pretty much stood the test of time to this point. There's no reason to think that it won't be with us for a long time to come. And yes, it still lifts and operates. It still moves. I forget how often it has to move, but it will be raised every once in a while for ship traffic. And speaking of movable bridges, we have our next one right down, and we're now into northeast Philadelphia. We have the Tacony-Palmyra Bridge. This was the second bridge built across the Delaware River between Philadelphia and New Jersey. Opened in 1929. This is an interesting structure because of its mix of the fixed arch span and the movable bascule leaf span. Pretty interesting. It makes for a pretty interesting looking bridge. I always, it seems like every time that I pay attention to this bridge, the bascule span always gets stuck. I don't know if that's because of a design problem or if that's the age of the span showing itself. I don't know. It just it seems to happen a lot. But anyway, I know people in northeast Philly absolutely love it when the bridge gets stuck. But this is a neat looking structure. It's the only arch bridge of its type in this part of the river. So it is a unique landmark.
I don't have traffic volume data on this bridge, but when the Betsy Ross bridge just south of it was $5, this one had only been $2 for the longest time, and it had a lot of traffic on it. When this bridge went to $4, I believe, for cash payers, it may be $3 for Easy Pass, I forget now. I think some of the traffic dropped off a little bit since the Betsy Ross was only $1 more.
Yeah, there used to be quite a difference between the two, but they are.
There used to be a difference between all of them. I mean, between this bridge and all of them. I know my granddad. His sister lived out in Jersey, and when we would go out to visit her, and we always crossed this bridge, and his reason being it was the cheapest. Hell, a lot cheaper than going down through downtown Philly or any other wild ideas I had as a kid. Yeah, that was back when it was like 25 or 50 cents to cross it.
Wow, you are that old, huh?
Yes, Sammy, I am that old, yes.
Next up, this bridge is only a couple miles away from the Tacony-Palmyra
I wanted to
Bridge.
jump in before we got there. Just I did look into what the other bridges were for the Burlington County Bridge Commission. There are a bunch of them on County Route 543.
Yeah. Okay.
All free bridges. The largest of them is the Riverside Delanco Bridge, and they've got some small ones, but that's their other jurisdiction.
I think I've been over that one before. That sounds familiar.
For anyone who's not familiar with it, CR 543 is essentially a more local alternative to US 130 that runs a little bit closer to the river through that area in New Jersey.
Yeah, I feel like I drove that once because I was. It actually might have been when I was getting the aerial pictures of some of these bridges. I stayed closer to the river, so I may have ended up on 543. I feel like I've driven over that bridge once before, so that was probably it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Just a couple miles downstream from the Tacony-Palmyra Bridge is the Betsy Ross Bridge, which was built to functionally replace the Tacony Bridge in the mid-1970s. This bridge has had a heck of a history in terms of its construction and also in terms of what was meant to connect it to it on both sides, which road enthusiasts have been having a field day over for many years. This bridge was constructed in the early 1970s. Folks in the northeast Philadelphia neighborhood of Bridesburg raised hell over the construction. They strongly objected to the bridge's landing in northeast Philly and the huge interchange with I-95. They were able to successfully delay the opening of this bridge by 2 years because even though the bridge was completed in 1974, the approach highway on the Pennsylvania side was delayed by about 2 years because of arguments and debates over exactly what it was going to look like. So this bridge sat unused for about 2 years before it was finally able to be opened. And that's basically as far as we ever got in terms of getting a full freeway connection on the Pennsylvania side. It does terminate at I-95. There was a large freeway corridor that was once planned for the Pennsylvania side. That would have run through the far northeast of Philadelphia. Also on the New Jersey side, out through, the far eastern suburbs of Philly on the New Jersey side. We'll come back to that in just a second. But does anybody want to take a crack at answering the question here of who Betsy Ross was? Because I have no idea.
I do. I do. So Betsy Ross was an upholsterer and flag maker who is known for sewing the famous flag with 13 5-pointed stars arranged in a circle representing the 13 colonies, along with the red and white stripes. The legend is that a group of founding fathers hired her to create the flag in June 1776. That's right, Amy. And that group included either George Washington or Ben Franklin, as well as Robert Morris and relative George Ross. And she altered the committee's design by replacing the 6-pointed stars with 5-pointed stars. And the flag resolution passed a year later, on June 14th, 1777, legitimized that design. And so there's a lot of, conflicting accounts whether or not the legend is true, but regardless, she's not the creator of the stripe part of the flag, just the 5-pointed stars in the circle. And so the origin stories kind of came about with her grandson, William J. Canby, as well as her great-nephew, Colonel J. Franklin Reichart. But also, there was a painting done of her by Eloise Sully Wheeler in 1851. That's the earliest account of her. Now, the account by her great nephew was based off of an 1824 story, but the accounts by her grandson and great nephew came about in the 1870s.
Well, if you read it on the internet, it must be true, right?
Right. Whatever they had for the internet back in the 18th and 19th century, which would have been newspapers.
Yeah, or whatever George Washington was using. I don't know if he had dial-up yet, but he had something against the British, though. So I want to double back to some of these proposals for the highways on both sides of the river. The sign renderings you see in the center of this slide, I found these on the AA Roads forum. They were, I presume, drawn up in the late 60s for the Pulaski Expressway, which you can see. That is the highway on the left. Its rough right-of-way can be seen here. This is the interchange with I-95 here, and the highway would have gone in a general northwesterly direction to meet Roosevelt Boulevard in the far northeast of Philly. Also, I want to call your attention to this rendering on the right, which is the New Jersey approach to the bridge. As we have it today, the highway comes off the bridge and kind of ends right here at Route 73. But as you can see in this map, there was a significant extension proposed that would have linked the bridge directly with I-295 and the Turnpike, probably extending as far east as Mount Laurel. But that project got scrapped as well. So very little of the approach highways on both sides of the river that were intended for the Betsy Ross Bridge were unbuilt and are unlikely to ever see the light of day.
I do want to add, while we're on this slide, that PA 90 was planned north from Roosevelt Boulevard, at least as far as the city line it was planned. The intent, according to the great site from Steve Anderson, PhillyRoads.com, also mentioned, it didn't mention anything beyond that point, but I believe that it was intended to tie into the PA 611 expressway, which the only piece of which we know is the Doylestown bypass. So you may have seen a continuous freeway from the New Jersey Turnpike through Doylestown, PA.
Yeah, I've only ever really associated the PA 90 freeway with a subsequent or perhaps a joint project to upgrade Roosevelt Boulevard to full freeway and sort of forming a northeastern quadrant of an inner loop. Either way, that would have been pretty useful to have as far as being able to get around Northeast Philly. But and as far as the freeway on the Jersey side, you know, having that extra corridor to get into Philly from New Jersey would have been pretty useful. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that hasn't seen the light of day to this point, and there's no reason to think that it ever will.
Yeah, this bridge opened up originally as an 8-lane bridge. It was the widest of the DRPA bridges, and seeing that there was going to be no need for 8 lanes, they finally narrowed it down to 3 lanes each way, 6 lanes total, plus shoulders on either side. They are working on the Pennsylvania side, and I see Mark in the comments alluded to this as well, to connect the bridge with Aramingo Boulevard, or Aramingo Ave. I don't think that's open yet. I think they're still working on that. I'm not sure what the date is for that project's completion, but you will be able to travel slightly, I guess, north of 95, north or west of 95, to get to Aramingo when that's done.
Yeah, should probably also mention that despite the lack of any direct connection to the Turnpike or 295 on the New Jersey side, up until the construction of the new flyovers for 95 in Bristol, this was the most direct route between New York and Philadelphia. So, you know, like if you went to a hotel in Philadelphia and asked them for directions how to get there, this is how they tell you to go from New York, that you would take the Turnpike down to exit 4 and then do NJ73 through a bunch of traffic lights to get to the beginning of the NJ90 freeway to get to this bridge.
Yeah, and that's all the more reason why it made sense to build the freeways that we mentioned before. Like, it just seems like it's such an obvious gap. Even with the completion of 95. It just seems like...
At least now that that's done, there is a not ridiculously out of the way direct highway connection between New York and Philadelphia.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
So, yeah. But no, definitely agree with you. It would make sense for there to be a connection from here to the Turnpike directly.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to call time out here from talking about road bridges, and let's talk about a railroad bridge for a second. This is the only railroad bridge on this part of the Delaware, so let's spend a minute on it. This is an interesting bridge because it's gone through a couple different iterations over the years. It was built in the late 1800s, around 1895. You'll notice that the vertical lift span right in the middle, that was not part of the original construction. It was added, I believe, in the either late 50s or early 60s. The one part of the bridge that was movable is still visible today. However, it hasn't been utilized in many years, and that is the swing span, which you can see in more detail on this slide in the upper left photo. This span more or less pivoted 90 degrees to open, and that was the opening for river traffic. Before the vertical lift span was in place, you had multiple fixed truss spans in the river. And then as the Delaware River channel was deepened and moderned after World War II, it was decided to add a more sizable, movable span to this complex. And that is the vertical lift span that we see today. It does carry its fair share of freight traffic between northeast Philly and southern New Jersey. It's also the bridge that carries the Atlantic City commuter rail line along New Jersey Transit. So if you've ever wondered how you get from Philadelphia to Atlantic City by NJT, well, this is the bridge that you cross.
And that line is completely discontinuous with the rest of New Jersey Transit.
That is correct.
You got to go on SEPTA or Amtrak to get to it from anywhere else on the New Jersey Transit network.
Yep. Yeah, I think you can take SEPTA or Amtrak to Trenton and then pick up the Northeast Corridor line.
Yep.
I think that would be the closest connection because the Jersey coastline starts well north of Atlantic City.
There is a connection now with that Atlantic City rail line and the South Jersey River line, light rail line that runs between Camden and Trenton.
Yeah, that's true. You could do
that. Right.
Not regular New Jersey Transit rail.
Right. Just the light rail that you can take to Trenton to get to New Jersey Transit, but it's quite a long trip to do that.
Yeah. And by the way, did I mention that swing bridges are awesome?
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
We need to build more swing bridges, I think. We kind of saw a little bit of a movement, to preserve or replace existing swing bridges with new ones in New York City, especially on the Harlem River. I think that the most recent one was the Willis Avenue, but also the 3rd Avenue and Madison Avenue, I think, are relatively new replacements. And those are swing bridges as well. But yeah, I like them. There really aren't that many of them left, if you think about it.
There's one in East Haddam, Connecticut on ETA2. And that one, I've seen them swing it.
Is that one of those that they swing manually? Like they have the guys get out on the deck and do whatever they got to do on the deck with the gears and all that?
I don't think so. I think there's a control system somewhere.
Okay. Because I know with some of the Amtrak swing bridges, they have to swing them manually. They're that old. And they never have updated their systems.
Yeah.
I was watching a how-to video on the Amtrak bridge over the Susquehanna River down at Perryville.
Yep.
And that one they actually have a dedicated crew of 50 guys that they bring in. And they rehearse, off stage somewhere, what they're going to do. And then they all go out on the deck. It's this weird, it's like a musical, right? All they're missing is the pit orchestra. But they're all out there doing their thing with the gears and, their, everything that they're supposed to. It's really interesting if you ever get to see video of that.
Yeah, no, the East Haddam one was just one person. But they have openings, I think it's either on the hour or on the half hour, something like that. And if there's a boat there waiting, when the time comes, they will open it.
I didn't realize that bridge opened as frequently as that. Okay.
Or at least it has the potential to. If there's a boat there waiting. If there are no boats, then they don't open it.
Oh, okay. All right, who wants to talk about the Benjamin Franklin Bridge? As we move back into the realm of highway bridges. We've made it to Center City, Philadelphia. This I mentioned earlier about the Tacony-Palmyra being the second bridge to connect Philadelphia with New Jersey. Well, this is the first one. Opened in 1926. Opened in time for the United States sesquicentennial in 1926. I think it opened in early July, so it was right on time. It was known originally as the Delaware River Bridge. However, it was renamed in honor of one of America's most famous founding fathers, the guy who flew the kite, among other things. I suppose I've already answered the question about who was Benjamin Franklin, but he had a very wide-ranging career and life in general. I think by today's standards, we would consider him to be a scientist. But he is obviously most known for his work as a founding father in the era of the American Revolution. This bridge was completed in 1926 as the world's largest suspension bridge with a span of 1,750 feet. It unseated the Bear Mountain Bridge in New York State, which had held the title since 1924. The Ben held the record until 1929, when the Ambassador Bridge in Detroit opened.
Yeah, I want to throw in some more about Ben Franklin, the person.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, he is known for so many things. I mean, really, he's probably like the most famous founding father to not have been a president. But he had so many roles. He founded the library company, Philly's first fire department, the University of Pennsylvania. He was the first postmaster general. He was the sixth president of Pennsylvania, which was what preceded the governorship. He had several different newspapers, the Pennsylvania Gazette. He had the Poor Richard's Almanac, and was affiliated with the Pennsylvania Chronicle. I think it's important to bring up, also fittingly for Black History Month, Ben Franklin had very conflicting views about slavery. He ultimately turned out to be an abolitionist at the end, but he did own up to 7 slaves in his early life. He started advocating for abolitionism in the 1750s, although he did keep his slaves until the last one passed away in 1781. But he basically, he wrote several things. He was part of different abolitionist societies. But the most notable thing so he and Benjamin Rush founded the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery in 1774. He was kind of conflicted about how to approach that with the Congress until right near the end of his life, which less than 3 months before he died, on February 3rd, 1790, he petitioned Congress to provide the means to bring slavery to an end. And while that petition was introduced to the House and Senate, it was rejected by pro-slavery congressmen, mostly from the southern states. It's just not surprising. A committee was selected to study the petition further, and on March 5th, 1790, it claimed that the Constitution restrained Congress from prohibiting the emancipation and trade of slaves. And, of course, as we know, decades later, we had the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation that President Abraham Lincoln signed in 1863. But I do want to bring, attention to his slaves, because they did fulfill, a huge role in him being the successful and influential person that he was, because they were there for him in his service for, helping domestically. 2 of them traveled with him to England. played a big role in his life and his an eventual stance on abolition of slavery.
He does seem to have been pretty ahead of his time, though, in terms of abolition.
Oh, he definitely was.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to think about how he was surrounded by all of these other, leading American founders that were Southern and had slaves.
Yeah.
So he was definitely ahead of his time in that regard.
Yeah. So many of the founding fathers that we come to know about are from southern states like Virginia, and points south and west of there. Yeah, I mean, obviously we talk a lot about folks like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, but yeah, it's interesting to hear the story of Ben Franklin and his involvement in the matter. That's not a story that is often told. Certainly, compared with the other folks I just mentioned. So that's good. I'm glad that we were able to kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Ben Franklin, in the more central states, if you will. Also on the northern side, we had John Adams from Massachusetts and Alexander Hamilton from New York, both of whom I think would also qualify as two of our most important founding fathers.
Absolutely. I do want to back up a second to this slide that I also found on the AA Roads forum. There was a lot of back and forth in the early years of the interstate system as far as what to do with the western connection between the Ben Franklin Bridge and Center City, Philadelphia. As you can see in this planning map from, I believe this is around 1960, this mess of an interchange that you see on the screen would have completely obliterated Franklin Square and a lot of the historic district along Vine Street and Callowhill Street, right not too far from Independence Hall. The city vehemently objected to this monstrosity of an interchange that would have completely changed downtown Philly. We went back and forth for many years. There was some, discussion about what they were actually going to do, and the compromise that they came up with was a hybrid where some of the ramps are direct between the bridge and the connecting highways, but a lot of the connections are made at grade. And so there's an interesting case, rarity in fact, on the interstate system where one must pass through a traffic light on an interstate highway. And in fact, I will show you guys that in detail when it comes time for the video presentation later. But it is interesting to see how we evolved, in my opinion, in the correct manner from this absolute nightmare of spaghetti ramps into the interchange that we know today.
You are begging me to take over for a couple minutes here, so...
I haven't heard from you in a few minutes.
No, so I wanted to discuss the road's history of the bridge. So that when the bridge opened initially, it was 8 lanes, not 7. The overhead arches actually were configured with red and green lights over each of the 8 lanes. So as you drive the bridge today, you will see where those lights used to be in the overhead spans covered over and replaced with the new ones. The lanes obviously were very narrow, 10 feet and a few inches each. When it opened, the innermost 2 lanes were shared with trolleys. And this persisted for some years before the trolleys were taken off the bridge. Now, I said innermost, so if you look in the chat, people were talking about the unused trolley stations in the abutments. And yeah, these were express trolleys over the bridge. They did not stop. They could not have stopped to pick traffic up from there. On the Pennsylvania side, the bridge originally just dumped straight into Philadelphia. It pretty much, all 4 inbound lanes came to a square, basically a T intersection, and you just turned from there. In the 1920s, that might have been okay, but by the 1960s, that's where the need for an interchange came from. Before I get to that, I want to note that on the New Jersey side, New Jersey numbered its state highways basically in a hub and spoke system. Camden was one of the hubs, but cities tended to maintain all the streets inside the city. So you saw this in Paterson. You certainly saw this in Camden, that routes were designated to the city line, and that's it. So when I was looking through my pages recently, I saw all these roads legislated from the city line outward, and I started looking at that, and I said, that makes no sense. And I realized that in 1927, when New Jersey redesignated its roads, you would have come off the Ben Franklin Bridge and when you got to the Bridge Plaza, you would have US 30, US 130, New Jersey Route 25, 40, 42, and 45 all come together in the same location. And I'm probably missing one or two as well. That Bridge Plaza, which is where the toll plaza is and was, imagine having to sort your way between 7 or 8 different routes and basically having the space of a square to do it with very little lane delineation. So that persisted until they built I-676 in the 60s into the 70s. It was a giant square, and then you either headed east-west on Route 30 or you turned to go somewhere else. And I can only imagine what that was like by the 60s. What I want to close on is where Dan led in with the I-676. With the direct ramp connections chopped off in Philadelphia, there is some controversy or at least some disagreement as to the definition of I-676. The FHWA, I believe, has 2 separate I-676s. The one in New Jersey ends at the state line. The one in Pennsylvania stays on the Vine Street Expressway going from 76 to 95. The Pennsylvania half of the Ben Franklin Bridge, according to the FHWA, is just US 30. However, PennDOT considers 676 a continuous route and signs it onto the bridge, thereby putting an interstate through a traffic light. So, depending on who you believe, either 676 is continuous or it's not. Either it goes through a traffic light or it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm glad that you stepped in and clarified that. That's an important delineation to make. I personally follow the PennDOT logic because, I'm a road geek and I love traffic lights on interstates. So, traffic lights they're the little engine that could, There aren't that many of those. So
I love it. I agree, Dan.
Yeah. I like the FHWA definition because how many routes, especially interstates, have 2 discontiguous segments like that? New Jersey has a couple, so it's nice to see Pennsylvania screw up and have one of their own also.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that either way you slice it, either way you interpret it, they're both weird.
Yep.
Because the discontinuity, both ends of it are so close together. And then if you follow the logic of PennDOT, you have the traffic light, which is an oddity in itself. So, it's one of those bizarre things in our hobby that I think always stirs up some conversation, which is really cool. I mean, I say this a million times to people, and I'll say it again before we move on to the next bridge here in just a second. But, these little oddities and goofs in our system are what really make it special, and they give us things to talk about. Yeah, everybody, or a lot of people want everything to conform to normals and standards and stuff like that. But if you think about it, if everything conformed and everything was to standard and everything looked the same, what would we talk about?
Rhode Island, I can vouch firsthand, has gotten a lot more boring lately.
I bet it has. It really sucks when we got to adhere to the MUTCD all the time.
So just to get back to why that traffic light is there, I don't know how many people here have gone to Independence National Historic Park, but it's a really great historic site. You've got Independence Hall, where the Second Continental Congress met and they signed the Declaration of Independence. You've got the Liberty Bell. You've got Carpenter's Hall, where the First Continental Congress met. You can see where the president lived during the period when the capital was in Philadelphia before they built Washington, D.C. So a lot of great stuff there. For anyone who's at all interested in early American history, highly recommend it. And I think that one traffic light on an interstate is a small price to pay for making sure that that got preserved.
Oh, I agree. You know, I should make it clear that I'm definitely in the camp of what they ended up building, not what was originally proposed, which, you know, the 50s and the 60s was high time for, you know, wrecking balls to come through the center of our cities and absolutely, you know, demolish the soul out of them. And I'm glad that we came to some sort of agreement as far as what to do in the area of the historic district in Center City.
And also, Ben Franklin almost became part of the Lincoln Highway. Back when they were laying out the Lincoln back before the bridge was built, the original plans or cities had it going south from Trenton down to Camden and then crossing a ferry from Camden over to Philly and then heading along, I guess, Market Street to Center City itself before carrying on west along Lancaster Avenue.
You know, I was hoping you were going to bring up some sort of Lincoln Highway reference tonight. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's designated in the Lincoln Highway's website as the Proclamation Route, which is like I said, easy to say.
Spit it out, son.
To help transition off of this bridge, I'll point out that the inability to complete the to complete I-676 through Philadelphia and the questions of what to do with the interchange resulted in 76 being rerouted from the Vine Street Expressway and the Ben Franklin Bridge over to the Walt Whitman Bridge and swapped with 676, or at the time 80S and 680.
Yeah, so the mainline route was different back in the 50s when they drew up the interstate system. Basically, the main line and the auxiliary were flipped. So this bridge, the Walt Whitman Bridge, was originally considered the bypass route. However, again, as Steve points out, the uncertainty involving the route through Center City, Philadelphia, meant that they diverted the mainline route further south, around South Philly, and left whatever the heck was going to happen through Center City to a future auxiliary route. This is your pretty prototypical standard 1950s era expressway bridge. This one crosses between South Philadelphia, not far from Jeff's headquarters at the Lincoln Financial Field, home of the Eagles. Fly Eagles Fly. It crosses over to Gloucester City, New Jersey. Designed by famed engineer Othmar Ammann, who would go on to deliver his magnum opus a few years later up in New York City at the Verrazano Bridge. He is also world famous for some of his other contributions in the city of New York, including but not limited to the George Washington Bridge and the Bayonne Bridge. Who wants to talk about Walt Whitman for a second? I think he deserves a mention.
I do.
All right, Laura's on the ball tonight. I like this. I like your style. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Walt Whitman is one of the most influential poets in the United States. He's also one of my favorites. His poetry collection is Leaves of Grass, and it was he first published it in 1855 and revised it many times until his death in 1892. So rather than creating multiple, volumes of work over his life, he kept revising and perfecting his one, Leaves of Grass, which is pretty cool. And if you want to see a first edition, you can actually find one in Ben Franklin's library company. Ben Franklin shows up again. So Walt Whitman actually lived in Camden, New Jersey later in his life. His poetry style is free verse, and he's considered the father of free verse. And his work is basically, his intent was to create an American epic that would reach out to the common person. And best example of that would be in his poem Song of Myself. He's also known for writing 2 poems about the death of Abraham Lincoln, O Captain, My Captain, and When Lilacs Last on the Dooryard Bloomed. He was a humanist that was part of the transition between transcendentalism and realism. He was known for being overly sensual and was also presumed to be gay, which he was criticized for during his life.
Yeah, that wasn't exactly cool back in the day, right?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah. I want to mention his connection with the Civil War real quick. He served as a nurse, I believe, in D.C. in one of the Union Army hospitals.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so I found that really interesting, which I didn't know. I recently rewatched Ken Burns' series on the Civil War, and that's one of those things that I feel like I should have known about, but I didn't. But it's really interesting, his life. He worked alongside the likes of Clara Barton. So, he's got an interesting life story, and far aside from his poetic side.
Yes, and a lot of his service during his service ultimately that came out in a lot of themes of his poetry, as far as sorrow and grief.
Yeah.
Also worth mentioning with Walt Whitman that he also lived here on Long Island, about 20 minutes away from where I am. And in that area, he also gave his name to Walt Whitman Road, which is a section of New York 110, and along that, a shopping mall called the Walt Whitman Mall. It's one of probably the second most major shopping mall on Long Island after Roosevelt Field.
That's awesome. What is a more quintessential 20th and early 21st century infrastructure than a shopping mall?
Well, I hope that some of Walt Whitman's greatness has rubbed off on you, David.
Can you buy any Walt Whitman poems at Walt Whitman Mall?
Not sure. I don't think so.
They've probably got a bookstore somewhere. Steve.
I don't know. Maybe not. So many bookstores are closed at this point.
Well, I'm operating under the assumption that the pandemic never happened, so I apologize for that. But
even before that, a lot of them were closed. Closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk about NJ Route 44T for a minute before we move on to our next bridge, because this state highway would have been positioned downstream from this bridge, and it was the original iteration of an attempt to build a Delaware River crossing between South Philadelphia and New Jersey. The Gloucester County Tunnel was proposed in the 1930s as a state highway venture between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. It would have connected State Highway 44 near Paulsboro with the area of South Philadelphia now occupied by Philadelphia International Airport. It probably would have been built in the style of the tunnels for vehicle traffic that we saw in cities like New York with the Holland Tunnel and the Midtown Tunnel. As far as I can tell, it would have been a 2-lane tunnel. I'm sure there would have been a provision to add tubes as traffic warranted. The proposal for highway, and it was designated, by the way, NJ44T because, of course, T in this case stands for tunnel, and because it would have tied in directly with NJ44, it would have been a spur off of that state highway. The Gloucester County Tunnel proposal remained on the maps as far out as the early 1950s, when the proposed tunnel was passed over in favor of the expressway bridge that you see today.
So would that have actually been signed as a letter suffixed route in New Jersey, or would it have been like NJ44 with a tunnel banner over it?
I think Steve could answer that question better than I could.
Until 1953, all of these suffixed routes were just as displayed, so it would have been shields for New Jersey Route 44T. That it would, had it existed, it would have been renumbered in 1953 to its own number. We can all speculate and dream as to what that number could have been, but I'm going to choose 16 because that's a number that wasn't otherwise used.
Yep. Also, probably worth mentioning with I-76, where that designation comes from, that it's from 1776, the year they signed.
No, it's not.
What'd you say?
No, it's not.
It's not?
That designation came before 1776 and has been disproven multiple times by the FHWA.
Okay, I heard that it was, and that it happened to work out with where it falls in the system.
Other way around, it fits in the system and it happens to be a coincidental number.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I had that same thought at first, when I was first getting into road geeking, that I thought, 76. Hey, this is Philadelphia, and 1776 was an important year. But, yeah, I suspect that it was largely coincidental, and you know what, it happens to work pretty well for the city that it passes through. It's one of those, again, goofy little coincidences that we find on our American interstate system.
Yes.
Hey, while we're on this bridge, I'll just mention real quick. So along with Go Birds, I live only a few miles from this bridge, so I go across it quite often, going to, say, Phillies games and whatnot. It's one of the three bridges with a zipper barrier on it that they utilize every day still. It's currently a metal zipper barrier because a number of years back they had to do some construction on the bridge. They basically needed every inch they could get for travel. So they took out the concrete barrier, put in the metal zipper barrier because it was 6 inches more narrow. Right now they're also going through and replacing those arch lane designation light things. They had some small structural things on it to use arrows on it lately, but they're taking them all out and replacing them with a catwalk type structure with the arrows on that instead.
Bummer.
Yeah, the overhead sign structures you're talking about, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I noticed on the DRBA Facebook page a little while back they had a video of raising one of the new ones, and they have to shut the bridge down for that, of course, because it spans the entire deck.
They do that every night, usually between like midnight and 4 a.m. or so.
Yeah, it's not that unlike when we did the mainline toll gantries on the thruway this past year. You do it at like 3 a.m. when there's no traffic, and you can hold traffic for 20 minutes or so. That's all it takes to secure it in place. It's pretty neat to watch in person. It's neat to watch everybody do their respective job, and it's always fun to be a part of something like that. But anyway, enough about me. Let's go to the next bridge downstream, shall we? We've only got 2 more bridges left. Can you believe it? This one in Chester, Pennsylvania, crosses over into southern New Jersey. It is the largest cantilever bridge in the United States by span length. It's about 1,600 feet in length. Still ranking among the largest in the world. In case you're wondering, that bridge up in Quebec is still the largest as of the broadcasting of this show. We talked about the unrealized freeway corridors when it came to the Betsy Ross Bridge a few minutes ago. We kind of have a similar story on our hands here with this bridge, although not quite to the extent of that one. but we'll come back to that in just a second after I tell you John Barry was widely regarded as the founder of the United States Navy, and his name is on this bridge as a result of his contributions to the early United States naval efforts in the American Revolution.
That's right. He was appointed a captain in the Continental Navy on December 7th, 1775, and was the first captain placed in command of a U.S. warship commissioned for service under the Continental flag. And then after the war, he became the first U.S. Commissioned U.S. naval officer at the rank of Commodore, and he received that commission from President George Washington in 1797.
Did you look this stuff up beforehand, or you actually have that date memorized?
No, I looked all this up and took notes.
Got it. Nice.
It is entirely possible that she has all of this memorized, but
That'd be pretty awesome.
You know,
It'll be awesome if Rainey was speaking this for us.
listen, in about 20 years, she'll be in that
Did you just
spot. I do want to talk about freeway alignments and what can happen when you choose the wrong one. We are looking at a map here of a series of alignments proposed in 1960 for a highway known as the Mid-County Expressway. You may know this highway as the Blue Route or as Interstate 476. Now, why do we call this road the Blue Route? Well, you'll never guess. When they were planning this highway in the 60s, you will never guess which alignment they chose. And throughout its construction in the 70s and 80s, this was the alignment that was chosen between Interstates 95 and 276 and 76. And it just went on when it became operational in the late 80s or early 90s. It became known in popular culture as the Blue Route, and that's what a lot of us travelers still refer to it as today. But I want to focus on a different alignment for a second. You may notice we have another alignment up here, the red and yellow route, which would have originated in the same area of far northeast Chester. It would have been a slightly shorter alignment than the Blue Route. But I want to focus on the green route for a second. You'll notice that it is probably the longest of the routes. It swings traffic farther out to the west than any of the alignments along the Philadelphia bypass corridor. But I want to call your attention to where the green route would have terminated, and it would have terminated in downtown Chester. And the reason that is significant is that it would have offered a direct freeway connection to the then proposed Commodore Barry Bridge, which you see on the right side of your screen. There were schemes back, in the 60s and the 70s to further upgrade U.S. Route 322, heading off in the direction of, say, Westchester. But the lack of a direct connection between, the bridge and the start of the Blue Route has been problematic over the years for traffic along I-95. The 95 corridor, of course, has never really been touched since the Blue Route's completion, and that's kind of been a problem. And it's one that isn't really on the radar as far as, the capital program or whatever you want to call it is concerned. Could the Barry Bridge have benefited from a direct connection to the Blue Route? Absolutely. In retrospect, I kind of look at these maps and these alignments and say that the route that they should have chosen was the green route. But we'll never know exactly what the impact of the green route would have had on the surrounding areas because it was not the route that was chosen.
And
Well, I would say timing is everything. I mean, looking at Wikipedia's history of Chester, Chester's high point for population was the 1950 census, with just over 66,000, and even in 1960, it was still at only 63,000 and change. But between 1960 and 1980, they lost about 18,000, and those 2 decades alone, it still lost another 12,000 cents. So they're now, as of 2010, down to 33,000, which is half the population they had at their height 60 years ago. So, I mean, and you mentioned if Walt Whitman in Philadelphia in building the interchange or connections between I-95 and Vine Street, when the Blue Route or Cross County Highway was laid out, they couldn't exactly push it down the middle of Chester because that's where everybody lives. Thus, you have off to the northeast or 322 to the southwest as well.
Yeah, I want to address a couple things in response to that. You know, this slide, you can see all this spaghetti-ness that's going on here. These are the different alignments that were proposed for I-476. And the green route, as you can see, kind of takes off from where the proposed Commodore Barry Bridge was and kind of goes off in this general direction, right? This is significantly further west than where the actual blue route begins, which is right here, and it goes off generally east of where the green route was proposed. The other thing I want to mention real quick is, where does NJ44T fit into all of this? And the answer to that is, when they proposed the tunnel, that would have been, if we have the Barry Bridge right here, 44T would have been over in this area, I think. And Steve can confirm that or not. It was right at, it was starting in Paulsboro, and it would have gone under the river at Paulsboro, I believe. And that would have brought you over to far southwest Philadelphia, more or less where the airport is today.
Sure. Yeah, maybe a little bit west of there, but you're in the ballpark. And what you see, I think that's 291 that they've. I can't tell what that interstate is at this resolution.
That's 695.
695. Yeah. So 44T probably would have tied into the base of 695. I think that's about how far west it would have been, and that would have made a lot of sense if they had ever progressed with that route.
Yeah, it's fair to say that had they built the tunnel, they would have tried to tie in 695 directly to the portal of the tunnel.
I'm just looking where Paulsboro is in Essington, which is essentially, as you said, the airport, and that takes it more towards that little island in the Delaware, which is pretty much the southern terminus of 695. I do want to address what someone said in chat regarding just widen 95 from the blue route to 322. And yeah, we had a discussion about that yesterday leading up to this webinar, that you're more likely to get the green route built now than you are to widen 95 through there. It goes under a couple dozen bridges, it's next to a railroad, and you're destroying more of an economically disadvantaged racial minority city in order to widen it. So pigs can evolve wings before we get to that.
Yeah, that area, they shoved that freeway in the early 60s. And there is practically no room to expand that highway at this point.
Yep.
So yeah, as we've said, good luck. By the way, somebody was asking about the I-695 number real quick. That was a proposal for an additional east-west expressway across Center City. It would have gone along the south edge of Center City and then would have curved to the southwest to meet I-95. That's an interesting proposal in and of itself. We won't talk about it that much in this presentation, but if you are interested in unbuilt expressways in Philadelphia, that's one that I recommend that you check out. I've listed the names of those highways in the chat. So Steve Anderson has done a great job of telling the story of those highways and their plans over the years, and his website is full of information as far as I-695 is concerned.
You don't realize going over this bridge, but look at the picture right now on the far right side. That's New Jersey. It goes over a fair amount of wetlands over there. That's a pretty long viaduct between the toll plaza and when you actually start climbing for that bridge there.
It is, yeah. Well, this reminds me, before we move on to the next bridge, Route 324. There used to be a ferry between Chester and Bridgeport, New Jersey. It was the original alignment of US 322 before the bridge was built in the 1970s. The ferry was discontinued when the bridge opened. The New Jersey approach to the ferry still remains as a state highway to this day. It's known as Route 324. And there are signs up that indicate that the road is officially, quote-unquote, closed. But that never stopped any road enthusiasts from checking it out over the years. In fact, I've got a little relic of Route 324 in my living room right now. We actually, in case you're interested in checking this episode out, we did cover Route 324 on our first online road meet episode back in 2019. So if you want a more intimate experience with that stretch of old highway and old concrete, then definitely check that out.
And just to clarify what to expect, it's basically an overgrown strip of pavement that dead ends at both ends, yet nonetheless is still a state highway. It's probably the worst excuse for a state highway I've ever seen.
We have some other pretty bad ones too.
Yeah, New Jersey has a problem.
That may actually win. There is also another double dead-end strip of old concrete state highway just east of there. That one is not a state highway. Google Maps labels it as Heilman Avenue, but that's one that's also worth checking out when you're in the area. 324 started life as S44, as a spur from 44, which is of note because 322 east of Bridgeport was 51. And you may wonder why you wouldn't number the spur as part of 51 if the whole route east of there was. And I really don't have an answer as to why they couldn't have extended the 51 definition when the state took over the road to the ferry. That's just what they decided. But that's why in 1953 they renumbered all the roads, because it made absolutely no sense for the state highway designation to change at that point just because one part was built under a newer contract.
Yeah, that is one advantage of the renumbering, is that it brought some semblance of order to things.
324 is still a very strange number. No, New Jersey has never numbered another route in that manner by, oh, this is an old alignment, we'll change the last digit. And we'll change it by 2 instead of 1. And that it should have been a 186 perhaps, which would have been the next sequential number in that system.
Yeah, is there any reasoning you could find as far as why they chose 324?
There's no reasoning when it comes to New Jersey. They change their minds routinely as to how they feel like numbering new roads.
Okay. Yeah, because we know 185. That's a pretty notorious, very brief state highway as well. But yeah, 186 would have been the next available number, right?
I'm not sure which happened first, because this was about 1971. 185 opened in 1988 and was originally conceived in 76. So this actually probably should have been one. I don't know if this would have been 180. No, it could have been 184, 183. I'm looking back at the years here that routes were numbered. I think it would have been 183 if they had done it right. But it might have been as low as 181. And they were still numbering in that system, and they just took the time out to do this one differently for fun.
again, it's an oddity, you know? It's one of those things that we can talk about in AA Roads chat and never come to a decision on, and that's okay, because it gave us something to talk about.
Where does 324 end again? On close to 130?
It is the straight line that dead ends at the 322-130 interchange and goes to the river.
Okay. Because with on 130 itself, they built a new overpass over the creek right there, replacing a lift bridge. And they're connecting, in a way, Route 44 under that bridge to where 324 will be. Now, at that point, it's not Route 44 and it's not 324, but there's going to be a direct connection between the two in that area.
That's correct. 324 connects to the rest of the world in two ways. That one, known as Island Road, is one way. It then turns into Main Street, Old 130 through Bridgeport. There's also the connection around the east side of 322 that serves the DRPA toll plaza. Those are the only ways in and out.
Yeah, the oddities of 324, we can go on all night about that if we wanted to. But we have one last bridge to talk about. We made it. We made it to Delaware's contribution to the Delaware River Bridge movement.
Yay!
It's
The old Delaware River Bridge that actually goes to Delaware.
It is my favorite. It is the bridge that started my love affair with bridges in general. The Delaware Memorial Bridge is a dual-span suspension bridge built to connect the New Jersey Turnpike with the turnpikes that were at the time planned in Delaware and Maryland. Nowadays, we just know it as I-95, but back in the day, there was a plan for a tolled expressway to connect the greater Wilmington area with Baltimore. Most of that was constructed as the Delaware Turnpike and the JFK Memorial Highway, which opened in late 1963. A quick aside about the Delaware Turnpike and the JFK Highway. On the Maryland side of the border, it was originally known as the Northeast Expressway. JFK, one of his final public appearances, in fact, before his assassination in Dallas in November 1963, was at the grand opening of this bi-state section of highway connecting Wilmington and Baltimore. I believe it was about a week before his assassination. Other dignitaries at that grand opening included folks such as the governors of Maryland and Delaware, and also some guy named Robert Moses, who you might have heard of. So
was Joe Biden there?
Well, Joe Biden, you know, speaking of Joe Biden, he was about, what, 20 years old? I think he was at Syracuse University at the time of the opening of this highway. And he would have been 4 years, he would have been 26 years old at the time of the opening of the second span of the bridge in 1968. The initial span opened in 1951, more or less in conjunction with the completion of the New Jersey Turnpike. It became painfully clear within the first few years of the bridge's operation that a four-lane bridge just wasn't going to cut it for the amount of traffic it was going to see. Immediately, discussions were started as far as what to do, you know, where to build a second bridge and whether to build that second bridge on the same site as the first one. They came to an agreement to build a second parallel span, and this project was executed between 1964 and 68. You will look at these two bridges and you will say, well, geez, these are identical twin spans. Well, that, you know, visually that might be true, but in fact they are two very different bridges. The second bridge reflects about 15 years of additional engineering advancements in technology and construction means and methods. To give you a little bit of an example, you know, the first bridge relied heavily on rivet connections in its steel plates and girders. Whereas the second bridge relied heavily on bolts and welds for its connections. So even in that 15-year period, which we think of as being pretty brief, you essentially have two different bridges born out of this idea that, you can reach the same conclusion visually in two completely different methods. And so that's what we have here, and that's what's on display. In case you're curious, the 1951 bridge is the New Jersey-bound bridge. The second span, which opened in 1968, carries traffic into Delaware. It is widely considered to be a linchpin in the Northeast Corridor. It is one of the busier links or river crossings in the entire northeastern United States. It is hard to imagine the Northeast Corridor as we know it today without this bridge. And it achieved that status even without it ever being a part of Interstate 95. It is part of 295. And of course, at the New Jersey end of the bridge, it allows you to transition seamlessly onto the Jersey Turnpike. But it has never carried I-95, and yet, in spite of that, it has always been one of the more important crossings, or one of the most important parts of the Northeast Corridor traffic system. And yes, as Steve mentions in the chat, there is there is a very good barbecue muskrat place just off the bridge in Newcastle. If you're looking for, as he likes to call, strange meats.
Well, I wanted to bring up, while we're on the topic of this bridge, it actually replaced two different ferries, and both of which were pretty important. You had the Penns Grove ferry, which would have gotten over to the north side of Wilmington, and you had the Pennsville ferry, which went to Newcastle. US 40 went down to the Pennsville ferry, so that would have been serving South Jersey and Atlantic City traffic towards Delaware. The northern one, NJ 48, would have taken US 130, some of the traffic more from Gloucester County, let's say, over. So before this bridge was built, people were really crossing up in Philadelphia, and South Jersey was relatively backwater and isolated, which is why it lags behind the rest of New Jersey to this day in development. But once the new bridge was built, 48 was pulled back from the ferry was discontinued, US 40 was routed onto the bridge, and the Pennsville ferry was then also discontinued.
Yeah, getting back to what Dan said about this being not part of 95, but nonetheless a critical piece of the Northeast Corridor, I think part of the reason for that was that until 2018, I-95 was discontinuous through this area. So the route that most people followed, if they wanted to, follow the 95 corridor between, DC and Baltimore up toward New York City, would be the Delaware section of 295 across the bridge to the unsigned section, the southern section of the New Jersey Turnpike that's unsigned NJ 700, and follow that until it became 95 further north. Now you don't have to do that. You can take the Delaware River Turnpike Bridge that we saw earlier and follow 95 through Pennsylvania. But I would expect that a lot of people just continue taking the old route that they're used to taking and take the Jersey Turnpike down to the end and cross the bridge to Delaware. Pick up 95 there.
It is the shorter and quicker route as well, so it does make sense.
Yeah, but it also bypasses downtown Philadelphia, Center City, Philadelphia, to use the terminology that's used in Philadelphia, and the traffic that could entail.
I will say the name of this bridge always intrigued me because it's known as the singular Delaware Memorial Bridge, even though there's two bridges. It's never been known as the Delaware Memorial Bridges.
Yeah, I want to talk about the name of this bridge real quick. It is named, the name is in recognition of servicemen from Delaware and New Jersey who were killed in action in World War II. With the opening of the second bridge in 1968, that jurisdiction, if you will, was expanded to include servicemen from the two states who were killed in the Korean War. You can go visit the War Memorial today. It's located right off of Route 9 in Newcastle, or within an eye shot of the bridge. I have it in these pictures here. I want to read, if I can read what it says on the top here, on the picture on the lower right. It says, inscribed here are the names of those valiant men and women of the state of Delaware and the state of New Jersey who gave their lives in service of the United States of America during World War II and the Korean War, in whose memory this Delaware Memorial Bridge is dedicated. You will find names of every serviceman and woman of those two states who were killed in action in those two conflicts on the wall here in Newcastle. And I want to call your attention to one particular name on this list. You will find this name in the Delaware section of the memorial wall, and I'm going to highlight it right here. And I'm going to tell you briefly that this gentleman that I've highlighted was my grandfather's brother, who was killed in action in the Pacific Theater. And his name is forever memorialized here in Newcastle. I don't know that I've ever told you guys about that, but he is here, and he is on the wall for all of us to see.
I'm pretty sure he told me somewhere along the way.
Yep, but there he is.
Yep.
I will definitely pay him a visit in the future.
You should. Everyone in the family apparently knew him as Ted. Not by his long, ridiculous name that can be hard for my teeth to pronounce.
Thaddeus!
See, it's easy for you guys to say. It's not as easy for me, but...
It's a cool name.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've had 40...
And on that note, I'll leave you with this view of the bridge, which in all my adventures in 2020 with the drone and socially distancing myself from all of you clowns, this was probably the money shot of the year. And it's always special to be able to see my favorite landmarks from new perspectives and new angles. This one takes top prize of any place that I saw in 2020. Again, this was the bridge that started my lifelong romance in bridge engineering and construction, long before I even knew what engineering was. So this is a view that I would like to nominate as my pick of Best Picture of 2020. And that's it. We covered all the bridges. Or did we? Well, there's one more topic I want to bring up with you guys before we sign off. This is not the end of the story as far as Delaware River crossings are concerned. We have a hypothetical to throw out to our audience before we end tonight. There has been discussion on and off, mostly casual, since really the formation of the Delaware River and Bay Authority in the early 1960s, about an additional Delaware River crossing downstream from the Delaware Memorial Bridge. I want to say that the original discussions really started around the time when they were considering what they were going to do as far as building a second span in Pennsville. And that kind of evolved over the years into just building a new bridge altogether, regardless of what was going on up at Pennsville. Over the years, there have been really three main sites that have been studied. You see them listed here, and on the next slide we have a little map that we'll draw to kind of paint the picture for you guys. but it seems like a lot of these projects are very far off in the future. There isn't really much political will at this point to make something happen, and it seems very unlikely that that will change much in the years ahead. But it is something that has been talked about off and on ever since probably the early 60s. So I've listed 3 sites on that previous slide, and if we go to a map of Delaware Bay, I'm going to draw these in for you real quick. So the northernmost site that was looked at was Woodland Beach, which is east of Smyrna, at the east end of, well, let me draw this again. That's way too big. Let me try this again. Woodland Beach is up here in this area. You also had a study done about a bridge down at Kitts Hummock, which is right across from Dover Air Force Base. That would have been something like this. And finally, the one that seems to always come up whenever discussions come up as far as a Delaware Bay crossing is the one down here at Lewis and Cape May. Something like that.
Is Lewis how it's pronounced? I thought it was Lewes.
It's Lewis.
It is Lewis. Okay.
Yep.
That's how I always used to pronounce it, and then I heard someone pronounce it Lewes, and I thought I had it wrong.
Well, that person's a moron, so don't listen to them.
Okay.
Apologies to insulting your mother.
The advantage that the Cape May to Lewis site has is more easy direct connections to freeways.
Disadvantage.
Have
as a native New Jerseyan, that is a huge disadvantage to that site because Garden State Parkway is full up in the summer. You're not going to want any through traffic on that corridor. Much better off moving it to one of the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, as far as something that you can just tie into directly, Like, I understand that in the summer it's a disaster, but, when you look at a map, you see that, hey, look, there's a highway right here. We can just tie right into that.
You're much better off with the blue one tying into 55.
Yeah,
55 is no picnic either, but you can do more there.
Yeah, so I suppose this would be a 2-part discussion at this point. Like, which of the 3 options is best, and are any of these 3 options even necessary at all?
Define necessary.
What was that, Laura?
Laura wants to build them all.
Build them all.
I think, I don't know how you qualify necessary. I think you would find great use to a crossing, especially, I again really like the blue one. You may see this revived when I-87 comes this way in 2140.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah. This will be the final link in I-87, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, just assumed that Cape May to Lewis was the best option. And this goes back many, many years, as we'll see on the next slide. But I can understand why you would want to build something further north. Even the Woodland Beach route, you can make an argument for because you can easily spin off a freeway from the Jersey Turnpike and 295 to cross down by Woodland Beach and then tie into 301, for instance.
All I ask is that I am selected to do the traffic study.
Well, I will put in a good word for your engineering company, and I will see to it that you are fast-tracked into that role.
Have the selector... Have me name drop to the selector so that they insist on me working on it.
Well, is your company minority owned or owned by a woman? Because that's a done deal at that point.
Silence.
I'm just commenting on how they choose contracts. There's a certain percentage of the workforce that must be either woman or minority owned. So that's where that's coming from.
It's a done deal until the Supreme Court strikes it down. Because when there was a case where they heard it, they basically said, we're throwing this out on a technicality for now. But they basically implied that if they were given a case where there wasn't a technicality, they would have been striking it down.
Yeah, I think the last that we ever heard of this proposal was about 15 years ago, when New Jersey, the state senators down in South Jersey, started to rumble and grumble about building something to replace the Cape May Lewis ferry. It always seems like South Jersey is more vocal on this than South Delaware is. And until both states are ever on the same page with it, I don't ever see this going anywhere.
Now, I think Delaware would like the additional traffic down there for their resorts. I don't think New Jersey, especially the Cape May County towns, really want that additional traffic coming down, using it as a bypass from the New York through D.C. area.
Yeah, there has to be something in it for both states. And I'm not sure that that's the case at this point. And that's particularly why I don't think we're ever going to get much movement on this anytime soon. However, I will say, we looked at a lot of renderings and we looked at a lot of planning maps, especially for the bridges up in the Philadelphia area, of bridges that, or really it was more of a study of expressway approaches that were planned and were never built. But we actually have a correspondent within the community who drafted plans of his own for a crossing of Delaware Bay. I'm going to say probably, 20 years ago now. And I would say those designs have held up pretty well to the test of time and the test of knowledge. And I would like to introduce you to this scheme. You see, we engineers, like to think that anything is possible. And I would like to introduce you to one knucklehead's proposal for a bridge over Delaware Bay, which would have connected Cape May with Lewis along the southernmost alternative. It would have tied in directly with the Garden State Parkway and some other improvements, which we'll discuss in the following slides. The working title of this project, as you can see, is Delaware Bay Bridge. It would have been a signature span cable stay bridge under this design. Pretty large proportions, as far as the navigation span is concerned. Of course, the overall length of it is one of the largest in North America. That's likely due to the fact that it would have swung to the west of Cape May. It would have kind of formed something of a C shape to avoid, I would assume, spoiling the view of the Atlantic City oceanfront. You can see the dimensions of this thing on your screen right now. It's a pretty impressive undertaking if that was ever to be constructed today. But, some people like to think that things are possible. And, yeah. So we have an engineer on staff here tonight who happened to 20 years ago think that this was a pretty good idea. And when I was looking at these drawings last night, I was absolutely blown away by how on point they were. Considering that they were that old, or they came from somebody of that age.
I notice you've included trains on there.
Got to give New Jersey Transit some place to go after Atlantic City.
Interesting.
Yay, trains!
Would the railroad tracks have been at grade in the median or on a second level?
Well, let's get into some of the particulars here.
All right.
First of all, I will tell you that this person who drew these renderings some 20 years ago was yours truly. This was...
Shocker!
This was an area of the country and an area of the Northeast that has fascinated me for many years, as far back as I was a kid, because a lot of my early travels as a youth were to Wildwood in New Jersey. Those are some of the road trips that I remember the most. A lot of the time we would originate the trip up in New York, but I was also familiar with the trip over to Wildwood from northern Delaware. And it always kind of captivated me, reading about the stuff that was proposed and reading about the stuff on Steve Anderson's websites over the years. It really opened up a whole new world for me to explore and to imagine. And that's what we have. That's really what's manifested here, I think. This is kind of a love letter to my early interest in roads and bridges. So anyway, I should point out that, as you look through the bullet points here, I mean, these are pretty detailed, I would say, for someone who's, at his oldest in high school.
And doesn't know what U.S. highway shields look like.
Well, I have a theory as to why I drew everything as a state highway shield. Because it was just too hard for me to draw. Like, I could never get it right, for the longest time. I still can't draw a U.S. shield correctly to save my life.
I will be honest, when I somewhere around age 12 or 13, I finally figured it out. Before then, I sort of drew it as a bunny with 3 ears.
I will say, you do have to give me a little bit of credit for attempting the Garden State Parkway sign.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't say attempting. I'd say drawing. You did it.
It's not that
It's
bad,
pretty
right?
impressive.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Definitely better than I would have done it. By the way, I like your I-99 designation. This is where it should have been.
Yeah, see, we got to give I-99 some love.
Unless they were going to put it in Maine or something like that.
No, it works just fine in Delaware, I think.
Yeah. Makes a lot more sense than where it actually is.
Well, that is true. But if we go to this slide, you get kind of the macro view of what I was thinking. You have the bridge here between Cape May and Lewis, again taking that awkward C shape, and I'm assuming that's again for navigational reasons and also because of aesthetic reasons. The dotted lines represent corridors to be upgraded to freeway standards. And as you look at it, some of this stuff has already happened. Like I'll highlight some of that stuff for you. Like we have Route 1, which is more or less freeway standard except for one traffic light between Milford and Lewis. The Parkway is, for all intents and purposes, freeway standard now that the traffic lights have been removed. You've also got freeways along 404 coming off the Bay Bridge into Sussex County. You've got an upgraded Route 9 as a freeway. You've got Stevil like this. You've got Route 55 in New Jersey. You've got Route 60 in New Jersey.
We forgot to mention that when we were talking about the Commodore Barry.
Yeah, so Route 60 was another freeway to go east-west across South Jersey. The popular...
That was the Delaware Memorial, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 60 would have started at the Delaware Memorial and gone generally southeasterly towards Ocean City. By way of an overlap with Route 55 around Vineland and Millville.
Vineland International Airport.
Get that too, yeah.
Yeah, most people in New Jersey don't know anything about Route 60, but Route 55 seems to come up and talk in the media like every 2 years or so. And it's probably been about 2 years, so I'm sure there's going to be something mentioned this year about 55. People are going to get their hopes up, or people are going to complain that, no, we can't build it, and then we won't hear anything again for another 2 years. That seems to be that life cycle of 55 now.
Jeff, I think you should call into KYW and bring it up.
Jeff, what you may not appreciate is the reason we don't build 55 is because we don't want all those Pennsylvanians at our beach.
Oh my goodness. Well, they come over anyway. They get on 55, they clog up the end down there, and they snake through 347 and 47.
Yeah, they should know better.
And, yeah. hunt down all the little side routes and county roads to, wander the way around.
But yeah, these are all my drawings from the same set. Notes and renderings and stuff like that. There's a lot to get into here, and hopefully between now and our season finale on March 20th, I'm going to be able to scan some of these so that you'll be able to see the full collection. But I was in love with the A-shaped pylon rendering or concept for a cable stay tower. So that's what you have here. The thing that impresses me is that, now that I have the experience of working on large-scale projects like this, and now I have the ability to go back knowing what I know about it, I can look at something like this and say, you know what, this guy wasn't that far off. That's the cool part, or maybe it's the scary part, I don't know. But I kind of knew what I was talking about 20 years ago. And that's the part that I think impresses me of all. Forget the subject matter. This is pretty neat to be able to see a teenager probably barely in high school, but yet here he is talking like he's a licensed civil engineer.
You did bridges at that age, and here you are on bridges. I was drawing complex interchanges at that age, and here I am designing interchanges. So
there you go.
In hindsight, you knew.
Steve, your question about Steve, your question about railroads and all that, where it fit on the deck and all that, can be kind of answered in this sketch in the upper right. We've got a 6-lane highway with a 2-track railroad in the median.
Emergency vehicles only in the left lane.
Well, we would interpret that nowadays as high occupancy toll lanes, I think.
Okay. But you had a capacity of 88,000 per day, and I was going to say a 6-lane bridge, especially in the Northeast, you can get over 100,000, but the emergency vehicle or restricted access to that lane would account for it. So I'd buy your 88,000.
Yeah, see, that's another one of those little things that it's like, he's actually not far off.
No. You may have to go above $10, though.
Well, yeah, that has not been adjusted for inflation or MTA pricing. But other than that, it's kind of neat to look at some of this stuff. I'll show you this rendering also. The one that I'm impressed with as far as looking at it, this one here, if I can draw it. This one in the upper left. You have what I would imagine is a steel box girder and what I'm illustrating in here is the chambers that you have inside. A lot of these box girder sections are hollow, of course, to a degree. And so I was illustrating that, and I have a note here for a bicycle path. I cannot imagine that anybody would want to ride 40 miles round trip on a bridge, but hey, it's there. So if you want to ride it, go for it.
I think you would see a lot of use of that in summer, more than you'd think.
Even if people don't want to ride 40 miles round trip, I think you could definitely get people who could start at either end, go a mile or two out and back for recreation purposes.
People may be training for something. You could do a run one direction and hit the train on the way back.
That is true too, yes.
You could have had the Cape May Lewis Marathon.
Yes.
How popular is that new bike path on the Garden State Parkway there over the Great Egg Harbor Bridge?
That's true.
I don't know. I haven't been down there since they completed the bridge.
I know the one on Route 52 going from Summers Point to Ocean City is very popular.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah. Yeah, I see a lot of traffic on that, whether it's the summer or off-peak.
Well, I can tell you that the bike path on a certain bridge between Tarrytown and Nyack is popular enough that I haven't been willing to try it yet during the pandemic.
Well, when it's coated in an inch of ice after Tuesday, that might be your shot to go do it.
That's a good point.
Well, we've made it, folks. There's the Cape May Lighthouse. We've made it to the Atlantic Ocean, and we've made it to the end of tonight's PowerPoint presentation. I'd like to thank everyone who has contributed to these past 3 episodes. You can now find them all on my channel. They are all available for you to go back and listen to and watch. Anything that you might have missed, whether it be in upstate New York or if you happen to miss something in the Philadelphia area or somewhere in between. All 3 episodes are now going to be on the channel. And they're a pretty good resource, I would say, as far as giving you guys an introduction to each of these bridges. And hopefully you guys will use this as a jumping off point to do your own research and to visit these bridges and check them out for yourselves. Now, I know we had a bunch of different panelists over these 3 episodes. I know David has been here for 2 of them.
Yep.
I want to thank him. I want to thank Anthony, Steve, Sandor has been here for 2.
Yep.
Jeff made his debut tonight and did outstanding. Laura and Mike have been here tonight, and they've been outstanding. All of you have done a great job of chipping in and helping out with detailing. I think the number is about 40 bridges between Hancock, New York, and the Atlantic Ocean. So you all have done a great job. Thank you all very much.
Woo!
And thank you for all your hard work putting this together.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and I look forward to chronicling the next river, whichever one that we choose after this one. But if anyone has...
Before we go, Dan, yes, there's something I would love to add. So Doug pointed out, and I can't believe I forgot to mention Walt Whitman's poem, Song of the Open Road. I even had it in my notes. In fact, I have an illustrated edition of A Leaves of Grass that includes Song of the Open Road and has a picture of an interchange in it. I don't know what interchange, but that impressed me enough in my youth to want to purchase it. But I wanted to read the last section out loud because I think it's very fitting for an ending, but also very fitting for Valentine's Day. Because Alans, the road is before us. It is safe. I have tried it. My own feet have tried it well. Be not detained. Let the paper remain on the desk unwritten, and the book on the shelf unopened. Let the tools remain in the workshop. Let the money remain unearned. Let the school stand. Mind not the cry of the teacher. Let the preacher preach in his pulpit. Let the lawyer plead in the court, and the judge expound the law. Camarado, I give you my hand. I give you my love, more precious than money. I give you myself before preaching or law. Will you give me yourself? Will you come travel with me? Shall we stick by each other as long as we live?
Outstanding.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and amen to that.
So I think we're going to take a 5-minute break to rest my vocal cords, and then when we come back at 9:15 Eastern Time, I want to show you guys some video real quick. If you have the time to stick around, that's great. And we'll be back in a few minutes to close out this episode and this series. So hope you can stick around for that. Deal? Deal.
Hey, Laura, why don't you read the rest of the open road while we're waiting?
I would love to. That would be perfect. I will start at the beginning. Song of the Open Road by Walt Whitman.
No. This is not like Zoom where you're watching. This was
Uh-oh.
Oh.
watching slides that somebody else put together. We're all chatting over the slides.
Go ahead.
All right, I will go ahead. Afoot and lighthearted, I take to the open road. Healthy, free, the world before me. the long brown path before me leading wherever I choose. Henceforth I ask not good fortune, I myself am good fortune. Henceforth I whimper no more, postpone no more, need nothing. Done with indoor complaints, libraries, I don't know how to say that word, cureless criticisms, strong and content, I travel the open road. The earth, that is sufficient. I do not want the constellations any nearer. I know they are very well where they are. I know they suffice for those who belong to them. Still here, I carry my old delicious burdens. I carry them, men and women. I carry them with me wherever I go. I swear it is impossible for me to get rid of them. I am filled with them, and I will fill them in return. You road, I enter upon and look around. I believe you are not all that is here. I believe that much unseen is also here. Here, the profound lesson of reception, nor preference, nor denial. The black with his woolly head, the felon, the diseased, the illiterate person are not denied. The birth, the hasty after the physician, the beggar's tramp, the drunkard stager, the laughing party of mechanics. The escaped youth, the rich person's carriage, the fop, the eloping couple. The early market man, the hearse, the moving of furniture into the town, the return back from the town. They pass. I also pass. Anything passes. None can be interdicted. None but are accepted. None but shall be dear to me. You air that serves me with breath to speak. You objects that call from diffusion my meanings and give them shape. You light that wraps me and all things in delicate equable showers. You paths worn in the irregular hollows by the roadsides. I believe you are latent with unseen existences. You are so dear to me. You flagged walks of the cities. You strong curbs at the edges. You ferries. You planks and posts of wharves. You timber-lined sides. You distant ships. You row of houses. You window-pierced facades. You roofs. You porches and entrances. You copings and iron gardens. You windows whose transparent shells might expose so much. You doors and ascending steps. You arches. You gray stones of interminable pavements. You trodden crossings. From all that has touched you, I believe you have imparted to yourselves, and now would impart the same secretly to me. From the living and the dead, you have peopled your impassive surfaces, and the spirits thereof would be evident and amicable with me. The earth expanding, right hand and left hand. The picture alive, every part in its best light. The music falling in where it is wanted, and stopping where it is not wanted. The cheerful voice of the public road, the gay first sentiment of the road. O highway I travel, do you say to me, do not leave me? Do you say, venture not? If you leave me, you are lost. Do you say I am already prepared? I am well beaten and undenied. Adhere to me. O public road, I say back, I am not afraid to leave you, yet I love you. You express me better than I can express myself. You shall be more to me than my poem. I think heroic deeds were all conceived in the open air, and all free poems also. I think I could stop here myself and do miracles. I think whatever I shall meet on the road I shall like, and whoever beholds me shall like me. I think whoever I see must be happy. From this hour, I ordain myself lucid of limits and imaginary lines, going where I list, my own master total and absolute, listening to others, considering well what they say, pausing, searching, receiving, contemplating, gently, but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. All seems beautiful to me. I can repeat over to men and women, you have done such good to me, I would do the same to you. I will recruit for myself and you as I go. I will scatter myself among men and women as I go. I will toss a new gladness and roughness among them. Whoever denies me, it shall not trouble me. Whoever accepts me, he or she shall be blessed and shall bless me. Now, if 1,000 perfect men were to appear, it would not amaze me. Now, if 1,000 beautiful forms of women appeared, it would not astonish me. Now I see the secret of the making of the best persons. It is to grow in the open air and to eat and sleep with the earth. Here a great personal deed has room. Such a deed seizes upon the hearts of the whole race of men. Its effusion of strength and will overwhelms law and mocks all authority and all argument against it. Here is the test of wisdom. Wisdom is not finally tested in schools. Wisdom cannot be passed from one having it to another not having it. Wisdom is of the soul, is not susceptible to proof. It is its own proof, applies to all stages and objects and qualities, and is content. Is the certainty of the reality and immortality of things, and the excellence of things. Something there is in the float of the sight of things that provokes it out of the soul. Now I re-examine philosophies and religions. They may prove well in lecture rooms, yet not prove at all under the spacious clouds and among the landscape and flowing currents. Here is realization. Here is a man tallied. He realizes here what he has in him. The past, the future, majesty, love. If they are vacant of you, you are vacant of them. Only the kernel of every object nourishes. Where is he who tears off the husks for you and me? Where is he that undoes stratagems and envelopes for you and me? Here is adhesiveness. It is not previously fashioned. It is apropos. Do you know what it is as you pass to be loved by strangers? Do you know the talk of those turning eyeballs? Here is the efflux of the soul. The efflux of the soul comes from within through embowered gates, ever-provoking questions. These yearnings, why are they? These thoughts in the darkness, why are they? Why are there men and women that while they are nigh me, the sunlight expands my blood? Why, when they leave, do my pennants of joy sink flat in lake? Why are there trees I never walk under, but large and melodious thoughts descend upon me? I think they hang there winter and summer on those trees and always drop fruit as I pass. What is it I interchange so suddenly with strangers? What with some driver as I ride on the seat by his side? What with some fisherman drawing his seine by the shore as I walk by and pause? What gives me to be free to a woman and man's goodwill? What gives them to be free to mine? I think I just got a message that I can't see. That Laura is 9:15. So I think that is my cue, because this is a very long poem. I'm not near the end. So I probably should let you all get back.
Well, you can always finish it at the end if you'd like.
Perfect.
Are you at a good stopping place there?
I am.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would only be fair that you get to finish it.
Perfect.
Before we sign off. But
yeah, no, I thought Steve mentioned about, doing it during the intermission, and thought that was a good idea, and it's a lot longer than I realized.
See, Steve made the mistake of daring you to do it. And you definitely have shown that you are willing to do just about anything to help us out.
It's true.
Let's look at some video. All of these bridges have been on my channel probably, I would say, since 2012 or so. Like, some of them have been on as far back as 2010, really. In fact, some of the first video demos I ever did featured the Delaware Memorial Bridge. So that was, I guess you could say, the first bridge that I ever actually filmed for the channel. The rest of the bridges followed in line. This video that we're going to look at first, we'll work our way from north to south. This was filmed upon the completion of the realignment of I-95 onto the Delaware River Turnpike Bridge in 2018. So we'll give you guys a little bit of a refresher course on that. I do want to talk about one thing. Steve, maybe I can loop you into this because you know more about engineering design than I do, and career paths and the like. I want to give you, Steve, a hypothetical scenario here, and I'm not going to name any names, but I want you to imagine for a second that somebody comes to you and says that they are really proficient and really passionate about drawing plans on AutoCAD and really interested in design and stuff like that, and they really want to get into the engineering realm. And they've got, an AutoCAD certificate, and they've taken classes as far as, drafting and design and stuff like that. What would you tell somebody as far as what to do next, as far as getting into the engineering field and translating their passion into a career?
What age is this person?
I will say this person is early 20s.
Early 20s. I mean, with that kind of experience, I think you can get in the door at an engineering company as a CAD technician. And that the AutoCAD certificate certainly is part of that. The age range is right. It's not something that necessarily requires a college degree. It's something that requires more technical proficiency in drafting, and that plus a passion for the subject matter, I think, lends itself very well. So that we call them CAD technicians at my company. Different companies will call them different things, but essentially you would be a drafter in CAD for the engineers, and you don't need to be an engineer or take any engineering classes to do that. And just by working in the field, you'll get the hang of it.
Yeah, this person is based in the New York metropolitan area, from what I can gather.
Have this person send me a resume.
I can do that.
All right.
I can get you guys set up. Yeah, because I can tell that this person really likes what they're doing. And what I like to tell people is, find something that you're really passionate about and chase it. And chase it relentlessly. Be relentless, okay? I was relentless when I was 22. And we see, what that yielded as far as my career is concerned. Yeah, you're young, man. Like, when you're 22, man, like, you got your whole career and your whole life in front of you. When I was 22, I was still in school, and I hadn't even really dreamed yet of traveling the country and working on big projects and stuff like that. When you have everything in front of you like that, that's the time for you to really figure out what you want to do. You figure out something that appeals to you. And when you figure that out, figure out a plan for going to get it. And so Steve, I would love to put you in touch with this person if I can. Because I think, again, like, Steve, you're more in touch with, like, the requirements for the design side of things, because you happen to work in that realm.
Right.
I'm more of the construction side, so yes, I do work with designers from time to time, but I'm not really like 100% in tune with what firms are looking for as far as designers are concerned. I do know that a lot of firms are looking for inspectors. So if field work ever appealed to you, let me tell you something. There are a lot of boomers who are retiring, and there aren't nearly enough people coming in to fill their ranks. So if you ever thought that reading plans might be something for you, you do have that, I don't want to use the term fallback, but that is another option for you that I would suggest that you don't close the door on.
I would like to take, for a resume like that, I would take it, I would send it to our head of the CAD department and just say, what advice could you offer this person? I think I can get some very high quality feedback as a result.
Yeah, and you know what you're talking about too. So I know that people would take you seriously and you could at least steer people in the right direction. So yeah, I think that's a fair resolution here. And I'll work on setting that up once we're off the air.
I can just interject for a second. Did I just see a 276 mile marker there at the middle of the bridge?
Rewind.
Would we have to rewind? All right, let's rewind here for a second. Where were you talking about? The middle of the bridge?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? He's right. That hasn't been switched yet, at least as at the time of the filming of this video, that had not been changed yet.
Mm.
Wow. Because that would have been the jurisdiction changeover, essentially. Yeah, there's the New Jersey sign.
Yeah, you see the New Jersey sign on the far left.
Yep.
Yeah, so... Yeah, it looks like a pretty new mile marker, too. So, like, they replaced it, and then they're going to have to replace it again for the, for the I-95 version of the mileposts. But, let's move forward here. Let's move down to the Burlington-Bristol Bridge. I think this is one of my videos that goes back to like 2010 or 2011 or something like that. You know, the first time that I drove this bridge was when I filmed it. Really having the camera and trying to document things, that kind of opened up new possibilities for me as far as being able to explore things that I had heard about for a number of years but had never actually seen before. So this bridge is an example of that, of a bridge that I had heard about for many years going back to when I was a kid, but I had never actually seen before until I was able to drive across it.
Looks super narrow.
Yeah. It's up there with some of the bridges further north on the river, that's for sure.
Yeah. Guess you can't go too fast over this one.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a trip. David, have you driven this one before?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. This is one of the ones you're missing.
That's on the to-do list.
It's on my to-do list as well.
Yeah, this is one that's worth seeing because it's a rarity as far as an old bridge on this section of the Delaware. And plus, it's an old vertical lift bridge. I mean, who doesn't like that kind of stuff?
I think this is the only Delaware River bridge I've driven once. It's just so out of the way from anything. Except for these guys.
Well, except for road enthusiasts.
I see plenty of traffic here, so somebody likes it.
That's right. Nothing is out of the way for us.
And that's right. There's no such thing as going the long way.
Did you folks hear about how I got home from the Chester online road meet?
I feel like you told me once, but why don't you tell us again?
Okay, so there had been kind of crappy traffic getting across Staten Island going there, and I kind of felt like, you know what, it's early, so I have time to mess around, and I don't particularly feel like just sitting in the same traffic. So I think I'm going to go around the city rather than through it. So, wait, are we paused or something?
We are, because I'm waiting for you to finish your story.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what I did was I took the Northeast Extension up to Allentown, then went out 78 into New Jersey, up to 87 to the Thruway, and then across to Westchester.
Now that, my friend, is a detour.
That is a detour. It's, as I called it at the time, the obscenely out-of-the-way scenic route.
Now, if Steve had been driving, he would have stopped in Youngstown, Ohio before going home.
He wouldn't have gone that way the way I went, though, because there are tolls on it.
Well, that's part of the problem, too, yeah. I suspect he would have gone up 309 or 611 instead.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Tacony-Palmyra Bridge can be seen in this video. This was another early video, I think, like 2011 or so. But, you know, all these bridges have been on my channel for many years at this point. If there are bridge videos in the Philadelphia area that you have not seen, they are all there, I promise. Check them out if you haven't already, or if you'd like to see them again. They are a few of the over 10,000 videos that are in the video catalog as of early 2021. And of course, who doesn't love a nice bridge video of a bascule lift bridge?
I don't think there are too many road geeks who wouldn't love it.
Well, that's true.
I think people in general would love that. I don't know of anybody who wouldn't.
Well, it's a lot easier to watch the video than to have to drive across it yourself, right? Yeah, I was looking at some of the comments in the live chat. Scott, no, the toll is $2, not $200. Although I suppose that the toll might reach $200 on the MTA bridges and tunnels at the rate we're going, with the new toll hike that's been proposed. Folks were leaving their suggestions as far as the future rivers that we should chronicle as far as series of webinars are concerned for bridges. One idea that I liked was the Connecticut River. I'm not sure how far north I would want to go, but you know, there are a few really neat bridges on the Connecticut River that we could get into,
including that swing bridge I was talking about before.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yep, and that, you know, I've actually never seen that bridge in person, and I've kind of decided that New England is going to be the 2021 equivalent of what West Virginia was in 2020, where it was a state that I just camped out in for a lot of the summer. I kind of need to reconnect with New England, I think. It's about time. Now, I want to show this video because I want to make Steve angry, because there are signs on the approach to the Betsy Ross Bridge that feature New Jersey Route 90. If you don't believe me, look at the overhead signs that we're about to pass under. It's signed as NJ 90.
No, it's not. It's signed as NJ Circle 90, but because the numerals are Clearview, that's not a New Jersey route shield.
Yeah.
Okay.
They, in short, they made a mess of those signs, but, you know, I mean, I suppose because it's PennDOT, you wouldn't expect much different. But we're driving the Betsy Ross Bridge into New Jersey from Pennsylvania.
Always got to blame PennDOT.
It's the fashionable thing to do.
Yeah.
This would be this is DERPA at this point, I think, and they're notorious for signs that don't match the standards of the adjacent agencies, including odd-colored green backgrounds that are shiny and difficult to see at night because they're too reflective, and the wrong font choices, among other things.
So you think those signs are a product of DERPA?
I'm inclined to think so, based on seeing the rest of their products and signs onto the bridge, for that matter. I think they probably re-signed the interchange. I have yet to see them do an MUTCD compliant sign. There's one. As I say that, the no tolls this direction sign is compliant.
So what you're saying is that we could populate the "there is no way that's MUTCD compliant" group on Facebook just with DERPA signs?
I think you could put all these videos on there. Just without commentary, just say, this is not compliant.
Oh boy. I do like some of the stuff that DERPA does, like at the next overhead gantry, like this one right here with the overhead signs with 2 and then the bunch of state highways on it. I do appreciate that.
And of course, exaggerating it looks like they are getting better with their signing standards. Like it does look fairly compliant there, from what I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting back to the topic of other rivers to cover, I was also going to nominate Connecticut, and I think Susquehanna is another one in the Northeast that deserves a nomination.
Yes, the Susquehanna. I know a lot. I know a lot about the lower crossings. I mean, it helps that I live near a few of them.
Yeah, the lower Susquehanna is beautiful. I know that we are very familiar with the crossings in Maryland. But that's a river that I probably should study up on more, because outside of like Harrisburg and Maryland and Binghamton, I don't really know that much about it.
Some cool bridges up in the Scranton area.
Yes, we visited at least one of those bridges in the Scranton meet several years back, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
See, because I was going through my car when I was trading in the Matrix for the Impreza, and I actually had a copy of Adam's meet notes from that Scranton meet back in 2015 in the back seat of my Matrix. Kind of a random thing to still have back there, but I was kind of reminiscing about that a little bit.
Yeah, that was you and me for that one. That was a fun meet.
I remember that. Yeah, didn't I pick you up from the train station somewhere?
You did. When you include the distance on the train, I covered about 500 miles that day.
Jeez. Yeah, because I picked you up in Beacon, didn't I?
Yup.
Okay. Yeah, and then we drove out. I drove you round trip, right?
Yup. I started where I was living in Morningside Heights, took the subway down to Grand Central, Metro North up to Beacon, hitched on with you there. We went out to Scranton, did the meet, came back, and then repeated it in the other direction. Also, I wound up missing my train that day, so you took me on a driving tour of the Fishkill area past the time.
I don't remember. I'd forgotten that part.
Yeah,
okay.
So there was more mileage in that part as well.
So we probably had like an hour to kill or something like that, right?
Close to it.
Yeah.
Wound up just missing it. We got there like 5 minutes after the train left.
Gotcha.
So we had close to an hour, 45, 50 minutes, something like that.
We're watching the US 30 westbound approach to the Ben Franklin Bridge, and if you watch this video long enough, you'll see a traffic light on the interstate, which is cool. But circling back to David, yeah, it was really interesting to go back and look at the meet notes of that one, and look at the meet photos and the itinerary and stuff like that. I mean, when we look back at meets and people who attended and stuff like that, that was one of the better attended meets I think that we've had in the last several years.
Yeah, definitely one I look back on very fondly. Adam did an awesome job just putting together great stuff in that area.
And that was the first meet, that was the first time, rather, that I saw the Tunkhannock Viaduct in person.
Same here.
And that significantly was on my mind as far as destinations to visit in September and October with the drone. I knew that had to be one of the spots that was that had to get coverage relatively soon as far as that aspect of things.
Yeah, I actually wound up back there in 2018. I had been in the Poconos for a business trip, but I went a day early. My original plan with what to do with the extra day was to drive the route from the Central Susquehanna Valley Road meet that I hadn't been able to go to because I hadn't gotten my car until right before that. And what wound up happening was it rained on my parade that day, and it wasn't going to work. I had some alternative plans, got on 80 to head out a little further west, and it wound up, it was very foggy, and the road conditions were such that it just didn't seem safe to be driving on the highway at the time. So I thought, you know what? I can well, what I did at first was I got off and tried to wait out the fog, and that didn't work. So I'm like, you know what? Given the exit that I'm at, I can get up to Scranton on the local roads pretty easily. So maybe I'll go up there and go to the train museum. So I head up to Scranton, and by the time I get up towards Scranton, the fog's lifted, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just going to go explore some stuff in the Scranton area. So I wound up back up in Nicholson that day.
Okay.
Did the back route to get there, though, took PA 92, which goes to another bridge over the river there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I ended up driving a sizable amount of 92 this past fall/summer.
Yeah.
I think it was to get between Nicholson and Lanesboro, which is where the Starrucka Viaduct is located.
Yeah. Oh, that's a further north part of 92.
Yeah.
For south, it goes by the river.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I drove the southern part of it, but I became a bit familiar with the northern stretch of 92 through that part of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that turns into, what is this, 79 at the New York border? Yeah, I think that turns into 79, and PA 29 turns into New York 7.
That's right, yeah, I picked it up in Windsor, coming down from Route 17, yeah.
Yep.
Here's the traffic light, by the way.
Yep.
The world-famous Interstate 676 traffic light. This was obviously, as we talked about before, part of the compromise solution for a connection to the Vine Street Expressway that did not involve a complete obliteration of Franklin Square. I happened to get the green light at the right time, so traffic moved just fine at the time. I don't know what it's like at rush hour. Maybe I don't want to know, but I don't know. It's there and it works. And if you're a road enthusiast in the area, definitely check it out.
The cool thing about having a toddler is getting to reclinch everything again for her.
That's true. She's got some catching up to do, right?
She does. And then the best part is that then we'll have to clinch it again when she gets older so that she can remember it.
So that she can get pictures of it, right?
Exactly.
See, I managed to pull that one off with my car. When I got my car, I created a new travel mapping account for the vehicle to track where it's been.
That's awesome.
And unlike my old one, which just counted if I was ever on the road, my new one, at least for now, only counts if it's my car and I'm driving.
Yeah, I never got into travel mapping, period. I kind of feel like maybe I should have done that for The Matrix, now that it's been retired, if I had kept a better log of things. But I remember enough about it to know, the extremes of its ventures, like the farthest points from home that it's strayed.
Yeah.
So there's that, As far as a clinching log is concerned, that's never really been something I was into. Just because all it does is it really just leads to fights with people about what should be counted and what shouldn't be counted and all that crap. But before we transition onto the Walt Whitman Bridge, I want to say that I do like how I mean, these signs I'm assuming were put up by NJDOT, but I do like the Easy Pass banner alongside the toll sign at this bridge. That's a nice little touch.
Yeah, where is this? Is this 676?
This is coming from 676 South.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's not a ramp movement that most of us would be familiar with, but if you pan to your right as you're going up the hill here, you got a nice view of the suspensions bridge. That's relatively unobstructed.
Yeah, so as far as travel mapping stuff goes, I just go with whatever definition they used for travel mapping purposes, and I don't get into fights with people over it.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you have a set of rules, then that just opens up the for there to be disagreements about the rules, and we all know that that does happen.
I mean, there are some things that I think should be a little bit different, but I'm like, whatever. I'm just going with whatever system they set up for those purposes.
Yeah, and also the other thing that I tell people is, you know, and I think Doug says this as well, and I know he's listening to this, but the hobby is what you make of it, or whatever you make it to be. So if you want to have your own set of rules, go ahead and have your own set of rules. Tell everybody else to F off if you want. You know, whatever you think is appropriate for whatever you're trying to accomplish is what it should be.
Yeah, and if there's other stuff you want to clinch that they don't have in the system, it's not like it's stopping you from doing it.
Exactly. You know, I wish that we would stop arguing with each other sometimes and just realize that very simple fact.
Yeah. I mean, like here on Long Island, like, you know, like what they have for 878 excludes some segments that I, for one, would consider to be part of it. And so what? You know, by either definition, I've clinched it. And
Well,
if they don't show up on the map, that's their problem.
Well, yeah, speaking of interstate highway oddities, 878.
Oh, I was talking about the section that's unambiguously not an interstate.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the interstate, so...
Yeah. No, the New York 878 and Nassau County piece, there's some stuff that arguably is part of it that they don't show on the site.
Yeah. Well, that's just a weird route in general, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's super weird. And they really ought to improve it. I mean, why they don't designate 878 along Rockaway Boulevard and Rockaway Turnpike, even if it's locally maintained, just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, if state highways exist as a means to convey information as far as, you know, highlighting a continuous route between destinations, you would think that you would want to sign that as one continuous state highway.
Yeah. And then the remaining portion of Rockaway Turnpike, Meadow Lane, and Rock Hall Road could become either alternate 878 or business 878. Whichever floats your boat.
Yeah.
At least that's what I would do with it.
Well, if they put you in charge, you wouldn't do worse than the people who are in charge right now.
I could definitely add some business routes on Long Island. I mean, like Old Northern Boulevard through Roslyn, there's no good reason why that shouldn't be business 25A.
Well, you know what else you could do? You could sign Nassau County's county routes.
Yes, I absolutely could.
Because we all know you know where they go.
Yes, I do. I could also improve some of the numbering.
Yeah, you could do that as well. We've got 2 more videos for you. Because we've got 2 more bridges to cover. I'm gonna save the video that I have saved for you guys of a sinking Cape May Lewis ferry boat for the season finale. But I'll just give you a little teaser by saying that video is out there and it exists. So tune into our season finale event next month if you want to see that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well, so to give you guys a little bit of an overview of the season finale, it's gonna feature Delaware, pretty much the entire state. You know, all the highways, all the interstates, all the toll roads, and some other stuff as well.
Hey, Delaware!
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the Cape May Lewis Ferry in depth on that episode, and we'll also talk about a artificial reef expansion program, which resulted in the sinking of one of the long-serving ferry boats on the Cape May Lewis route. So there's that to look forward to.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
It's the season finale, so of course I'm looking forward to it, but I know that we'll get a lot of contributions from a lot of people along the way for that episode. It's going to kind of take the format of a virtual road meet, kind of like what we did with Cincinnati about, what was that, about 8 months ago now? So it'll be a lot of fun.
I'm excited. I'm in.
Me too.
I figured I wouldn't have to convince you guys that much, once I told you what was actually in it. But yeah, that should be fun. Should be a good way to close out the program from this season and from the past year.
Yes. Oh, and Doug Kerr says in chat he wants to know if all the covered bridges of Delaware will be covered as well.
I don't even know which covered bridges exist in Delaware.
There are 3, and they're all in the northernmost part of the state.
I thought there were 4.
Pretty sure there are 3. That's actually one of the very first things we clinched with Rainey. We took her to all 3 covered bridges. So I have pictures of her with each bridge as like a little tiny baby.
Tiny baby with a tiny bridge. Yay!
Yay!
I think the
Are
fourth
they
one
actually on the state highway network, or are they off on random local roads?
They're on local roads.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
The
No, they're
fourth
not on-
one
Which I thought
was
I did with Delaware back a few years ago. I think we covered more than we didn't cover in Newcastle County.
Oh yeah, that's another classic, David, where you took the train down to Wilmington and met up with me down there, and we just drove around Newcastle County all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I said, I think there are more state routes that we clinched that day in Newcastle County than that we didn't clinch.
It might be possible, yeah. I mean, we spent pretty much the whole day out that time, and
Yeah.
all of your pictures on your website are from the state or more or less from that day.
Most of them. There's also some stuff from on the way to the Corridor H road meet.
Okay.
Went down with Anthony. We took Delaware 1 down to Dover and then Delaware 12 into Maryland and then crossed the Bay Bridge,
Oh, okay.
which is a cool way of going. Bit off the beaten path for how you would typically head out to Virginia.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Especially that part of Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Doug's suggestion is an interesting one because I never have really paid attention to the covered bridges of Delaware. Doug has kind of sucked me in recently to the concept of covering them, so maybe I'll have to go check these out at some point in time for March 20th, which is the date that we've penciled in for the season finale.
I will happily go recheck them out with you. Gotta get updated pictures of Rainey as a toddler with the bridges.
That would be a good meetup idea.
you could do a video in the back of a road trip caravan, and so you would see all of our cars in the video as you drove each bridge.
Oh.
Yeah, I could do that.
We took her before she was even a month old. I gave her to her on June 19th, and we went on July 14th.
Wow. Was that more or less your first trip with her?
One of the first, yeah. Because our very first trip with her, we took just over the PA line.
Okay, so you broke
Wait,
her
did you say
into
she was
the...
born on Juneteenth?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you say she was born on Juneteenth?
Yes, she was born on Juneteenth.
That is pretty cool that she may be about to have her birthday be a holiday.
Yes, I completely agree.
Well, yeah, and we know that, Black History Month is going on right now, and obviously, the history of race relations in certain parts of Maryland is something that you're passionate about, Laura. So, it's kind of fitting that you gave birth on that day.
It is, and it's, obviously I didn't plan it.
Well,
Rainy came at 3:30 that morning, so.
And she was like, I'm good. I've waited long enough.
Yep. That's right. It was 5 days late. She needed a little extra time to cook.
Free at last. Free at last.
Thank
God Almighty, I'm free at last.
Yes, if she could talk, I'm sure that's what she was saying.
Yep.
Our finale video for tonight, featuring the southernmost fixed crossing of the Delaware River, and my personal favorite, not just on the Delaware River, but anywhere, and that is the Delaware Memorial Bridge. I always think about this with the Delaware Memorial. Yeah, I have a thing for twin-span bridges, don't I? There's this bridge that inspired the interest in the beginning, and then there's the bridge that I suppose professionally I'll be most known for, which also came in a pair. So I find that to be an interesting parallel between these two.
Yep.
I have rendered you folks speechless with that remark, but that's okay.
I don't want to criticize your bridges, but these are more beautiful.
Everybody's got their own tastes and whatnot.
I have two reasons for saying that. One, it's not cable-stayed suspension, and two, my firm's design ultimately wasn't able to be selected for the Tappan Zee, which we probably would have won if we were able to get to that point.
Well, in HNTB, or your company, it was involved with the design of this bridge, I think. At least one.
I know we're involved with this one, but that's not the reason I like it. But
I thought you were going to go there.
I've never been involved with this myself. I just know that we have ties to it. But it's public knowledge that our bid on the Tappan Zee had to be retracted. So I can't go into it, but I can say that much because that part's known. Unfortunately, they ended up with a Honda design instead of it would have been a much straighter design, sleeker, and less able to make fun of.
I have seen your design for that bridge, and it is a shame that it had to be removed from consideration.
Yep.
So if we're talking about twin bridges, what do people think of the Robert Moses Causeway?
I like it.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
I do too.
That's actually one of my favorite bridges in New York State.
Yeah. I think it's the second longest after the Tappan Zee.
I mean, at least over water, it probably is, yeah.
Yeah.
But, they put up the welcome sign here that says, welcome to Delaware, and then they promptly send you into a toll plaza. So that tells you what they really think about you. And then, to add insult to injury, if you're not smart enough to get off I-95 in Newark, they hit you again before you enter Maryland.
Yup.
That is a good place to go get gas and get some great macaroni and cheese and then skip the toll.
Skip tax. Because it's Delaware.
It's a good place to stop for some muskrat, too, off of this next exit here.
Absolutely.
Steve, did you ever go back there?
I tried to go back. I think I tried to go back this year, and I tried to go back last year before COVID, and they just said we couldn't get any this year, so I did not go back last year. I had not asked this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So how long until this goes cashless? Because this is feeling so 20th century right now.
Yeah, this is one of those bad ones that they really should look to do cashless on.
Well, you can see, though, the problem is not the toll plaza. The problem is not the bridge capacity or anything. All of the problems in this crossing are related to the squeeze to get onto 95.
Yeah.
Yeah, which DelDOT is in the process of trying to rectify. At the time this video was filmed, the widening to 3 lanes southbound on 295 through the US 13 interchange had not yet been completed. That has since been completed. There is also a project underway that will add a lane to the merge area on the 295 southbound transition to 95. It is hoped that those two projects in conjunction with one another will help ease traffic flow coming off of the bridge.
God, yes.
Yeah.
But then they need to add a third lane onto Delaware 1.
Yeah, the Delaware 1, thing that, we can talk about that more in the season finale, but that's more of a long range thing at this point.
I-87?
Maybe.
Be nice.
Guys, do you have anything that you want to mention real quick before we sign off? Oh, I know that I know Laura wants to finish something.
Yes. My poem.
Well, you know what? Why don't we let her go last? Do you guys,
Yes,
the
I'll go
rest
last.
of you guys, have anything else you want to bring up real quick?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was good hearing from you, Sondor. It was great having you.
I'm good. Thanks, everyone, for an awesome webinar.
I know Jeff already signed off, but he wanted to send his good wishes to all of you, and thanks to Jeff for joining us. Steve, what about you?
What about me?
I don't know. You have anything you want to add?
I'm tired, I'm cranky, and I miss Muskrat.
All right. Well, Laura, I'm going to put this back up on the screen because I really like this picture. And Laura, if you want to pick up where you left off and take it from there.
Sure. The efflux of the soul is happiness. Here is happiness. I think it pervades the open air, waiting at all times. Now it flows unto us. We are rightly charged. Here lies the fluid and attaching character. The fluid and attaching character is the freshness and sweetness of man and woman. The herbs in the morning spout no fresher and sweeter every day out of the roots of themselves than it sprouts fresh and sweet continually out of itself. Toward the fluid and attaching character exudes the sweat of the love of young and old. From it falls distilled the charm that mocks beauty and attainments. Toward it heaves the shuddering, longing ache of contact. Allons, whoever you are, come travel with me. Traveling with me you find what never tires. The earth never tires. The earth is rude, silent, incomprehensible at first. Nature is rude and incomprehensible at first. Be not discouraged, keep on. There are divine things well enveloped. I swear to you, there are divine things more beautiful than words can tell. Allons, we must not stop here. However sweet these laid-up stores, however convenient this dwelling, we cannot remain here. However sheltered this port, and however calm these waters, we must not anchor here. However welcome the hospitality that surrounds us, we are permitted to receive it but a little while. Allons, the inducements shall be greater. We will sail pathless in wild seas. We will go where winds blow, waves dash, and the Yankee Clipper speeds by under full sail. Allons, with power, liberty, the earth, the elements, health, defiance, gaiety, self-esteem, curiosity, allons from all formulas, from your formulas, Obadiah, and materialistic priests. The stale cadaver blocks up the passage. The burial waits no longer. Allons, yet take warning. He traveling with me needs the best blood, thews, endurance. None may come to the trial till he or she bring courage and health. Come not here if you have already spent the best of yourself. Only those may come who come in sweet and determined bodies. No diseased person, no rum drinker, or venereal taint is permitted here. I and mine do not convince by arguments, similes, rhymes. We convince by our presence. Listen, I will be honest with you. I do not offer the old smooth prizes, but offer rough new prizes. These are the days that must happen to you. You shall not heap up what is called riches. You shall scatter with lavish hand all that you earn or achieve. You but arrive at the city to which you were destined. You hardly settle yourself to satisfaction before you are called by an irresistible call to depart. You shall be treated to the ironical smiles and mockings of those who remain behind you. What beckonings of love you receive, you shall only answer with passionate kisses of parting. You shall not allow the hold of those who spread their reaching hands toward you. Allons, after their great companions, and to belong to them. They too are on the road. They are the swift and majestic men. They are the greatest women, enjoyers of calms of seas and storms of seas, sailors of many a ship, walkers of many a mile of land, habitués of many distant countries, habitués of far distant dwellings, trusters of men and women, observers of cities, solitary toilers, pausers and contemplators of tufts, blossoms, shells of the shore, dancers at wedding dances, kissers of brides, tender helpers of children, bearers of children, soldiers of revolts, standers by gaping graves, lowers down of coffins, journeyers over consecutive seasons, over the years, the curious years each emerging from that which preceded it. Journeyers as with companions, namely their own diverse phases, four-steppers from the latent, unrealized baby days, journeyers gaily with their own youth, journeyers with their bearded and well-grained manhood, journeyers with their womanhood, ample, unsurpassed content, journeyers with their own sublime old age of manhood or womanhood, old age, calm, expanded, broad with the haughty breadth of the universe, old age, flowing free with the delicious nearby freedom of death. Allons, to that which is endless as it was beginningless, to undergo much, tramp of days, rest of nights, to merge all in the travel they tend to, and the days and nights they tend to, again to merge them in the start of superior journeys. To see nothing anywhere but what you may reach it and pass it, to conceive no time, however distant, but what you may reach it and pass it, to look up or down no road but it reaches and waits for you, however long but it stretches and waits for you, to see no being, not gods or any, but you also go thither, to see no possession but you may possess it, enjoying all without labor or purchase, abstracting the feast yet not abstracting one particle of it, to take the best of the farmer's farm and the rich man's elegant villa, and the chaste blessings of the well-married couple, and the fruits of orchards and flowers of gardens, to take to your use out of the compact cities as you pass through, to carry buildings and streets with you afterward wherever you go, to gather the minds of men out of their brains as you encounter them, to gather the love out of their hearts, to take your lovers on the road with you, for all that you leave them behind you, to know the universe itself as a road, as many roads, as roads for traveling souls. All parts the way for the progress of souls. All religion, all solid things, arts, governments, all that was or is apparent upon this globe or any globe, falls into niches and corners before the procession of souls along the grand roads of the universe. Of the progress of the souls of men and women along the grand roads of the universe, all other progress is the needed emblem and sustenance. Forever alive, forever forward, stately solemn, sad withdrawn, baffled mad, turbulent feeble dissatisfied, desperate proud, fond, sick, accepted by men, rejected by men. They go, they go. I know that they go, but I know not where they go. But I know that they go toward the best, toward something great. Whoever you are, come forth. Or man or woman, come forth. You must not stay sleeping and dallying there in the house, though you built it, or though it has been built for you. Out of the dark confinement, out from behind the screen, it is useless to protest. I know all and expose it. Behold through you as bad as the rest, through the laughter, dancing, dining, supping of people, inside of dresses and ornaments, inside of those washed and trimmed faces, behold a secret, silent loathing and despair. No husband, no wife, no friend, trusted to hear the confession. Another self, a duplicate of everyone, skulking and hiding it goes, formless and wordless through the streets of the cities, polite and bland in the parlors, in the cars of railroads, in steamboats, in the public assembly, home to the houses of men and women, at the table, in the bedroom, everywhere. Smartly attired, countenance smiling, form upright, death under the breastbones, hell under the skull bones. Under the broadcloth and gloves, under the ribbons and artificial flowers. Keeping fair with the customs, speaking not a syllable of itself, speaking of anything else but never of itself. Alans, through struggles and wars, the goal that was named cannot be countermanded. Have the past struggles succeeded? What has succeeded? Yourself? Your nation? Nature? Now understand me well. It is provided in the essence of things that from any fruition of success, no matter what, shall come forth something to make a greater struggle necessary. My call is the call of battle. I nourish active rebellion. He is going with me must go well armed. He going with me often goes often with spare diet, poverty, angry enemies, desertions. Alans, the road is before us. It is safe. I have tried it. My own feet have tried it well. Be not detained. Let the paper remain on the desk unwritten, and the book on the shelf unopened. Let the tools remain in the workshop. Let the money remain unearned. Let the school stand. Mind not the cry of the teacher. Let the preacher preach in his pulpit. Let the lawyer plead in the court, and the judge expound the law. Camarado, I give you my hand. I give you my love more precious than money. I give you myself before preaching or law. Will you give me yourself? Will you come travel with me? Shall we stick by each other as long as we live? The end.
That was pretty impressive for unrehearsed.
Thank you.
That was a beautiful reading by Laura of Walt Whitman's, what was that called again?
Song of the Open Road.
Song of the Open Road. I recommend that all of you who are interested in 19th century literature and poetry to check out his work. He's one of the greats as far as the American scene is concerned. And I think on that note, we're going to close up shop for tonight. I want to thank everybody who has contributed over these past 3 episodes to helping me chronicle every one of these bridges across the Delaware River. It's a series that I've really been looking forward to for the past year or so. And everyone who has taken part in this has played a very important role in making this all a reality. And you all are to be commended for that. So thank you all very much to members of the Skype panel. Thank you all very much to the folks in the live chat. And thank you to all of you who will watch this video. It's been my pleasure to bring it to you. And from all of us here, I'd like to sign off by saying thank you all very much for watching. God bless. And I look forward to seeing you again on our next live episode. Take care, everyone.